All right, let's get it. Drive time. Wednesday afternoon, 13 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. How do you like 72 degrees and sunny here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah? We've had an unseasonably cold 3 or 4 day stretch here in May. Mays typically are, in my humble opinion, and as you guys know, all of my opinions are humble. May is the best weather month that we have in our state. That's just me, and it's lovely outside. And as it is every day, it's going to have you along for the ride. Hashtag Tusks up, I guess. We have a new name for our hockey team. It is the Utah Mammoth. We'll get into it today. You can tell by the tone of my voice, it was not my preferred selection. But, hey, Porter, real quick, remind the people right out of the gates the definition of the golden rule here on the drive. Every day, 2 to 6 live, no exceptions.
Yes, Spence, the man with the gold makes the rules and the nicknames.
Yes, and also do unto others, the whole thing. That golden rule is still a thing, but the actual golden rule, certainly in the United States of America, is the man with the gold makes the rules. Or the man with the gold pretends that you vote for the name you want to get your data for his company and then comes up with a name they were going to use all along. It is the Utah Mammoth. It is not the Utah Mammoths. It's not plural. It is the Utah Mammoth because mammoth as a singular term represents the entire state. One Utah, baby. And that's what I'm all about. You guys know that. So a historic day for the Utah Hockey Club. I will fondly remember the name of simply Utah Hockey Club. I've talked about it on the show. I think it's clean. I think it's classy. I kind of like the UHC. I like the sweaters. But now we move ahead into a reality where we're going to have a big, fun mascot, and they're going to dress up the Zamboni as a mammoth. And, man, hilarity ensues. I'm a fan of whimsy. Don't paint me as anything other than somebody who embraces whimsy. I'm a whimsical guy, Porter.
You're the guy today that doesn't like fun things. Just today.
Not this fun thing. It's not my favorite, but we'll get into it. Porter is going to give you a history lesson. What is wrong with you?
What?
On your socials today? Goodness gracious. Now, hold on. Do not unload the clip. We're going to do it for opening tip. During our first segment, Porter will enlighten, educate, entertain, and help us understand why this name actually fits a team in Utah. But in the meantime, let's talk a little UEFA Champions League. PSG Arsenal. You want to get into
topical.
it?
Some rugby first segment, too.
PSG is up 1-0. It's actually a massive game. Most people in the States don't really follow this tournament. Their aggregate's 2-0. I believe the winner advances on to the final. It does. But a lot to do outside of the hockey club getting their new name. Just another, insane night of NBA playoff basketball. I told you the Cavs are in trouble, man. Indiana's been good since January, and, of course, it helps when you have most of your best players playing, which Cleveland did not. No Darius Garland, turf toe. That dude's got to get on the floor. They cannot play Ty Jerome anymore. Ty Jerome has had a good year for them. I don't want to be overly critical of a kid who's played really well all year long, but he's not ready for this moment. And Max Strus had some good moments, but had one of the worst turnovers I've ever seen in my entire life. Sammy Merrill, Bountiful legend, by most accounts, the second greatest shooter in the history of Bountiful High School. I don't say that. Most other people do. Sam gave them some good minutes last night. Donovan really had to play a perfect game, and he got gassed and made some really bad errors down the stretch. But credit Indiana and Tyrese Halliburton, who hit the massive step-back three to win that game, and Indiana goes home up 2-0. And in NBA history, teams that have lost the first two games on their home floor have only got on to win a 7-game series 5 times in the history of pro basketball, meaning tonight both Oklahoma City and the Boston Celtics are on watch. We'll get to some of those games. And just a gutty performance and championship medal on display once again for the Golden State Warriors, who lost Stephen Wardell Curry in the second quarter to a hamstring injury. Steph will definitely not play tomorrow and most likely will miss Game 3, making it very, very interesting. But Minnesota was horrific. And Ant-Man, I'll tell you what, you can't wait that long to wake up. Rudy was more or less neutralized. They were horrible from 3, came out of the gates with no energy. So Golden State goes up 1-0, and the NBA playoffs have been just awesome. So a lot to do on the show. We'll bring in Tony Jones. Right out of the gates, our buddy from The Athletic who covers the Jazz when the Jazz are trying to win. Right now he's on the Nuggets beat. Does some NBA drafts. So we'll bring in Tony right off the top. Neil Smith for a little hockey on the day. Our hockey club has received its permanent name. CK, Chris Camerani live in studio for an entire hour. I'll be out on Friday. You guys will hear from Scott Mitchell in my place coming up on Friday afternoon. And then Andy Larson, Andy B. Larson, Blarson, call him whatever you want, from the Salt Lake Tribune stops by later on as well. Tony Jones, Neil Smith, Chris Camerani, Andy Larson, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, and that guy, Porter Larson. All right, before you chime in, we're going to get to opening tip because I want you to educate the peeps as to why this name makes sense. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to hear from Porter. Get ready for a history lesson on a Wednesday afternoon, courtesy of Prize Picks. It is time now for your opening tip.
Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of the drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
Cash in on the basketball playoffs with Prize Picks. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineup, whether it's points, rebounds, assists. Take your pick of more or less. First shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. Turn your playoff hot takes into tickets to basketball's championship series. Every lineup you make during the playoffs on Prize Picks will enter you into the Take-Two ticket sweepstakes, which could get you and a +1 a VIP trip to the ship. So here's what you do. You download that Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700, and they're going to hook you up with $50. When you play your first $5 bet, don't even have to win that bet to get the 50. It's on the house. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700, and you get $50 when you play that first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game all season long. I'm taking more on Jason Tatum, 51 points as far as his total fantasy score. So that's combining all of his stats. I think Tatum's in for a big night tonight. I'm taking less on Russell Westbrook, 11.5 points. Give me more OG Anunoby, 23 points, rebounds, and assists. And I will take more for Mikal Bridges, 7 rebounds and assists combined. Prize Picks, run your game all season long. Hashtag Tusks up. Goodbye, Utah Hockey Club. Tusks up, Utah Mammoth. After a 13-month process that included trademark drama and more than 850,000 ballots allegedly cast by fans in allegedly multiple rounds of voting, allegedly, Utah Mammoth was revealed as the new name and permanent identity for the NHL franchise today. Porter Larson, fan of football, fan of meat.
There you go.
Fan of weightlifting, cardio, lipids. Tell me why, young man, and you're also a man that understands you were born and raised in God's country, one of the coolest places in the world, Summit County, Oakley, shout out, thereabouts. And you're also a fan of Utah archaeological history, right? You understand the landscape of our state more than most because you're into such things. You like rare birds, you like nature, you like animals. You don't like children. You don't like fantasy football. You don't like fun, cute things. But
not as much. You
tell us why Utah Mammoth works historically as the name for the hockey club.
Well, historically, Spence, it was a place where you go back to certain eras, the Ice Ages, the Bonneville Sea, where Lake Bonneville was a literal inland sea, right? There were multiple different kinds of pachyderms all over the place, right? Elephants of certain kinds. Columbian mammoths were the most common. They are the largest of all, 9,000, 10,000 pounds or more. And then there's the woolly mammoth, which we're all familiar with. Would have been on like the northern shores of Lake Bonneville, right? There's only like one actual finding of a fossil of a woolly mammoth in Utah. Most of them are actually Columbian mammoths or mastodons also. So there's 3 different giant pachyderms that used to roam Utah at some point in time. And yeah, if worlds could have collided in my life, sports and like fossils and dinosaurs and whatnot, that's like a perfect intersection. So I got plenty more on it if you want to, but that's kind of the summary of mammoths, pachyderms in Utah.
So to be reductive, based off of your historical knowledge of these creatures, you think the name works?
It works. It's also fun. And I talked to you a few months ago how the nickname isn't really for us, isn't really for you and me. right? Like the nickname, the fan events, the stuff like that is mainly for like the younger demographic, so you can build a fan base up, right? So you can have fans in 10, 20 years, not just so us schlubs on the internet can react to it. How many mascots aren't a little corny, a little silly, right? I think that's kind of where I land with the mascot thing.
And they don't allow jazz music in Salt Lake, yet our basketball team is named the Utah Jazz.
They need to bring the live jazz band back to those games, just to be clear.
Shout out to the old school jazz band in the Salt Palace in the 80s, for those of you jazz fans old enough to remember that. Look, I liked the Utah Hockey Club. I know that I was on an island. I know that there weren't very many people on my side. I just felt like it was clean. I liked the branding opportunity, and I liked that we weren't going to have to deal with a corny mascot. But, Porter's Point stands for the myriad of families and children that will make their way to the Delta Center to watch the Utah Mammoth. This could be kind of fun. But more than anything else, we now have the identity. We have the logo. We know what it's going to be moving forward. Rest in peace, Utah Hockey Club. We'll never forget you. All right, real quick, big games tonight for a number of different reasons. Now, mostly for Oklahoma City, in my opinion. I do not think the New York Knicks are built to beat the Boston Celtics 4 times in 7 tries, despite best laid plans from the front office to move off of R.J. Barrett to bring in OG Anunoby, despite giving up all their draft capital to bring in Mikal Bridges, and then, of course, having Josh Hart as well. 3 big-time wings that can really provide pushback and guard Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. No part of me believes Boston is going to have another historically horrible shooting night. I don't understand why schematically Joe Mazzulla elected to continue his 5-out 3-point shooting attack after they went up 20 in the third quarter. The craziest stat from game 1 with New York and Boston is after Boston went up 20 in the third, they went 10 straight possessions shooting 3-point shots. In the third quarter, they took 20 shots total, and 19 of those shots were 3-pointers, and they were up 20. Like, just kill the clock. A couple of nights ago was a bad look for the analytical community who continue to believe that you can analyze basketball with calculators. So Boston, to me, just will not have another historically bad shooting night. I just don't think the New York Knicks are designed to keep up with them to win 4 games in 7 tries. But if I'm Oklahoma City, I'm a little bit more concerned than I would be if I'm the Boston Celtics, just simply because the Denver Nuggets are 2 years removed from winning a championship, and Oklahoma City has never had a long playoff run. This is kind of the first time. They had a decent run last year. They won a round, right? Shea at 26. I do believe Shea will be the MVP. I think SGA is the MVP. Well, I think Jokic is still the best player in the world. And what Denver did to OKC game 1, if I am the Thunder, I am wildly concerned about what I saw. And I'll repeat what I said earlier. In the history of NBA basketball, teams that have lost the first 2 games at home have only gone on to win a 7-game series 5 times in the history of NBA basketball. So we'll get back to the games last night. I thought Tyrese Halliburton continues to answer questions. Donovan played really well, but you got to have all your pieces. And right now the Cavs are injured. And the Warriors, without Stephen Curry, going to Minnesota and grab game 1, just a gutty win for them. So NBA basketball continues to be really, really fun this time of year. We're going to bring in Tony Jones coming up on the other side to talk more basketball. But the Pacific Nations Cup is on its way. The World Rugby has confirmed the full PNC schedule with the USA to host the finals for the first time. The tournament final and the third-place playoff will be hosted here in Salt Lake City. Joined now by Luke Thompson. One of you is Luke Thompson. Luke, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Thanks for being in studio. And also, is it, I'm going to ask you to pronounce your name so I don't botch it.
Fitz.
Say again?
Fitz.
Fitz. Nice to meet you guys. Thanks for coming in the studio. So let's talk about this tournament. We'll start with you. Luke, what should our listeners know about the Pacific Nations Cup?
Well, it's basically a 6-nation tournament. So Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, Japan, America, and Canada all play each other in this like a really high level but really exciting tournament of rugby, and it's amazing to be able to have the finals here in Utah and Denver.
You've been playing rugby like your entire life, yeah?
Yeah, pretty much.
And you're 44 years old now.
I am.
Which inspires me because I'm even older than you, so I can do hard things. Tell me what have you enjoyed about playing rugby out here in Utah? What makes the rugby scene kind of in Utah a little bit unique?
Well, to be honest, I've never played here in Utah.
You have not?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've come in from outside to help promote this game and on behalf of World Rugby and on behalf of the Japan team.
Oh, you're playing for the Japanese national team. Are you both playing for the Japanese national team?
Tonga.
You're playing for Tonga.
Yeah.
I found out about this interview 5 minutes ago, just so you guys know. So, Fitz, we'll go to you. You're playing for Tonga.
Yeah, play for Tonga.
Okay.
I had two World Cup. And to answer your question about the rugby here in Utah, it's
Yeah,
going to be an exciting time to be in Utah and for the state of Utah because the rugby here is growing and we need this. So it's going to be exciting for everybody here in Utah.
We got a lot of Tongans. We got a lot of Polys, and they're all like built warriors. So we have a lot of good rugby players here, yeah?
Yeah, I do agree, yes.
Fair enough. Okay, so we've got Team Japan and we've got Team Tonga, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you guys playing each other?
Yes, we do. We're not. If we make the finals.
If you make the
we'll play each
finals.
other, yeah.
Okay, very nice. Very nice. All right, Pacific Nations Cup. So how long have you guys been here in Utah? Did you just land?
No, I moved out here.
You live here now.
2018 and played for the Utah Warriors.
You play for the Warriors.
Yes.
And Luke, do you play professionally in a league?
I played in Japan for about 18 years.
For 18 years.
Yeah.
Okay. What position do you play?
I play, they call it lock or flanker.
Flanker. And what about you, Fitz?
Play wing.
Okay.
Wide receiver in football.
Wide receiver in football.
Yeah.
See, you're talking my language now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very nice.
For the Chiefs.
Well, gentlemen, let me ask you this. Who's the favorite to win the tournament? I know who you want to win the tournament, like your own team. Who's the best team? Let's be honest, in this tournament.
To be honest, Japan's got a good team.
Okay.
Japan and Fiji. So,
okay.
But the great thing about it is it's very tight.
Okay.
And especially the Pacific Island teams, the physicality, the real the violence of that game is amazing to watch. You know, they're so combative and such great rugby. It's a real spectacle. So I mean, any team could win. I mean, everyone says that, but it is really close and really tight.
And you're from New Zealand, yeah?
Born, yeah.
Okay. All Blacks, most famous rugby team,
Yes.
right? Did you ever play against them or around them?
I played against them several times for Japan.
How intimidating is the haka in real life?
When you grow up with it, like in New Zealand, it's intimidating, but you perform your own hakas at school and stuff like that. So it's not something that I would say is intimidating. I say it's more motivational.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you grew up
challenge.
you grew up doing it as well.
Yeah, each school in New Zealand, and I think the same in Tonga.
Yeah.
Their own versions and stuff. So you'd perform your haka before you play, and every team has an individual haka, and which has meaning for their school or for their team or club. So. Yeah.
I can tell you this, for somebody who didn't grow up with it, whenever I see it, it looks really intimidating. And I'm never even there live. So it's interesting that you guys grew up with it. All right, let me ask you both this question. Fitz, let's start with you. Do you ever think rugby will catch on in our country? I mean, I know it's grown, and certainly I've got a lot of friends who played high school rugby, like at Highland High School.
Yeah.
And a lot of friends who played club rugby, like at the University of Utah where I went. And we've got a pro league, as you guys know. What needs to happen, you think, to make rugby kind of catch on in America so more people are familiar with it?
This is what we need right now is the PNC, the final here in Utah. More rugby like this in America itself to build this game. But I see it growing and it's getting bigger. And the PNC, it's much needed here in America, especially here in Utah, because we got a lot of talent out here in Utah to do this.
Luke, what about, I mean, you grew up in a place where it's like the biggest sport, right? Like, isn't rugby the biggest sport in New Zealand? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's a religion. It'd be, football for you guys is rugby for us.
Yeah. Do you think it'll ever make its way over to the States and kind of latch on?
And what Fetch was saying, I think the success of the national team is really important.
Okay.
From my experience in Japan, it always had a rugby culture, but when the national side did really well in a couple of the World Cups, then it just exploded overnight, and you had young kids out there seeing these guys on TV, and they became stars and stuff like that. So that in that example, the success of the national side was a huge influence in that.
Very nice. How old are you, by the way, Fitz?
Oh, I'm 39.
39.
Yeah.
Okay, so one more question here. Typically, like in American football or basketball, guys hit their mid-30s and they're just done. How long do you guys want to play this great game? You're in your late 30s and 40s. How long do you want to do this?
Oh, Luke is 44. He just stepped off at 42.
Yeah.
Say again?
I actually retired at 42.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were still playing.
No,
Yeah, we both retired.
You're both retired.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
I'm still living the dream.
No, for sure, for sure. Hey, great to meet you and excited to have this. It looks like it's coming to America First Field on Saturday, September 20th. It is the Pacific Nations Cup. We're going to get the final and the third place game, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for coming in studio, and we'll continue to talk about the tournament. Great to meet you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll catch a break. Tony Jones joins us coming up next right here on ESPN 700. Couple of really, really big games tonight. Man, the playoffs have been so fun. I'll repeat what I said earlier. In the history of pro basketball, in the history of the NBA, teams that have lost the first two games at home have only won a best-of-7 series 5 times. Cleveland Cavaliers in some trouble. Minnesota gets beaten by Golden State. But tonight we've got Boston and OKC on watch. So let's bring in our next guest, Tony Jones from The Athletic on a beautiful Wednesday here in Salt Lake City. Tony, happy Wednesday, sir. How are you?
Was good.
Well, I was going to play the Go New York, Go song as a bump, but I don't want to get ahead of myself, TJ.
No.
But I'll tell you what, man. No part of me believes Boston is going to have a historically horrible shooting night like they did in Game 1. But give me your thoughts on our New York Knicks going up to Boston and stealing Game 1.
Okay, do you believe we can win the series?
I do not.
I kind of do not. Okay. Do you believe that we can split at the Garden in games 3 and 4 and send the series back to Boston 2-2?
I do not.
Okay, I do.
Okay.
So if they're like, then it becomes a 6-game series. Then, in a 6-game series, if we figure out a way to extend it to a 7th game, then, anything can happen in that 7th game. But I know you definitely do not. We think we can extend it to a 7th game. All right. Look, they missed a billion 3-pointers. We got a really good OG game, but we did not get a really good Cat game. I don't think we got a great Jalen Brunson game. Obviously, he was great down the stretch, especially, kind of hunting switches. And, I think it was a huge win. Like, even if you don't think we can win the series, or if nobody thinks that we can win the series, it was a huge win because, like, Boston had just been beating our heads in forever and ever and ever, and we haven't won, and we haven't beaten them in forever and ever and ever. And we needed to know that we can win that game. Like, if we had ended up losing game 1, I think that we get swept, or the series ends in 5 games, because it's like Boston has a historically bad game. We get back in it from 20 down. They're still having a historically bad game, and we still can't figure out a way to win the game. But the fact that we figured out a way to win the game, it makes the series viable all the way up until game 4. It gives, and it gives us, some modicum of belief. And, I fully expect us to lose tonight at TD Garden. But, MSG is going to be rocking, and I look forward to that in games 3 and 4.
Well, and I will say this, like, the Jalen stuff down the stretch is very real. If the game is close, he has just put himself in such rarefied air with his ability to close in crunch time situations. So there's part of me that looks at Boston's roster and says, look, it's not just Drew Holiday, who still is one of the best perimeter defenders in pro basketball. It's not just Derek White. But if they can't get Jalen in switches, like when they try to get Jalen in switches with the other perimeter players, and it's Tatum, who's 6'8", and it's Brown, who's 6'9", even if they get Holiday or White off of Jalen, there aren't great matchups unless Porzingis continues to sit because he's sick, and Mazzulla has to play Horford and Cornette, and then you can force switches there. And I think that's where they were able to find success in the fourth quarter, because they were able to get Jalen switched on the Boston bigs. But if they can't do that and they're trying to play the switch game with those other 4 perimeter defenders, I don't know how Jalen finds space. But, Tony, if they find a way to keep it close, Jalen has made me a believer in what he can do down the stretch. No part of me believes that Boston is a for sure winner if this game is close with under 5 minutes left, because the other thing, and this is applicable with Oklahoma City as well, Boston and OKC were so historically good this year that they blew a lot of teams out. In close games, Boston's metrics aren't great because they usually blow teams out. So if the Knicks can somehow find a way to keep it close, under 5 minutes, within 5 points, I absolutely believe they have a chance. I'm just not sure they can keep it that close, because we've seen Boston blow the brakes off of so many teams this year.
Well, I mean, I think New York is good enough to keep these games close. And, and I think, if you keep the games, the teams close, I mean, Boston has the best player in the series, right? Jason Tatum is the best player in the series. Jalen Brunson is a better closer than Jason Tatum is. He's a better shot maker. He has more counters. He uses all 3 levels. And for Jalen Brunson to be as good a closer as he is, as a 6'2" under the rim guard is frankly one of the more remarkable things that I've seen in the NBA and covering the league over the last 10, 11 years. So it's one thing to say, hey, Boston can go and blow the doors off of the Knicks for 4 straight, and they can. They're good enough to do that. But there are a couple of things that are in play here, and I actually saw this in Boston's first round series against Oklahoma City. I think the Celtics are tired. They've been playing basketball nonstop, almost nonstop for almost 2 years. They had a title run last year. Obviously they had another 82-game run. Jason Tatum played in the Olympics, so he didn't really get a full off season. I think that, there are some tired legs at play with the Celtics. And I think that, when you have a title run, that next year, people could say, hey, you're going to repeat until they're blue in their face. Those legs get weary. I saw it happen last year with the Denver Nuggets. They could barely run up and down the floor in Game 7 of the second round, in the second half of Game 7 of the second round of the playoffs. And I think that there's some fatigue there for the Celtics that the Knicks or whoever they're playing against can kind of take advantage of.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the Game 1 was so fun. I mean, that close. Bridges ripping the ball out of Jaylen Brown's hands. Like, everything about that game ruled. We'll see what happens tonight. But let's stay in the East, Tony, before we move out west. And the fact of the matter is, if Cleveland's going to be without, mainly Darius Garland. And look, I think Ty Jerome has had a really good season. He's not ready for this moment. He's not ready for the postseason. 1 of 14 last night. So they need Garland back. Certainly, of course, they need Evan Mobley, DeAndre Hunter. They were without 3 of, their 5 best players, certainly, and maybe even their 4, depending on how you analyze Jared Allen. Donovan had to be almost perfect last night, and he almost was, but down the stretch, he ran out of gas. I'm not sure why you rely on him to bring up the ball when he can't even walk. You got to box out on a free throw. I mean, it was a perfect storm. But Indiana, ever since Rick Carlisle made some rotational adjustments and they got healthy, putting Aaron Nesmith in the starting lineup, Andrew Nembhard is a pit bull. Benedict Mathurin wants all the smoke. Like, they have all of these wings that are just dogs. And unless Cleveland can get healthy in a hurry, it feels like this could be a historic regular season for the Cavs that goes out the window. So Indiana up 2-0. Tom, what do you think, and how do you think it plays out?
Are we ready for Tony's Hot Take Wednesday?
I want all of Tony's hot takes on a Wednesday.
The Indiana Pacers can win the NBA championship.
Whoa! Whoa. That is the hottest of hot takes. Hello?
That is, I know it is a scorching hot take. At the very least, they can win the East. They are capable of winning the Eastern Conference. That is they don't have, right, like, we all agree they don't have a superstar, right? Like, they don't have the one. Like, they don't have the one on their roster. But what they do have is they have 10 guys that are playoff level players. And there is this is not, we're not talking about, players that are, just happen to be in a playoff rotation, right? Sam Merrill, we love Sam Merrill because, I covered Sam Merrill at Bountiful, Utah State. He's an 82-game player, right? Ty Jerome, we just talked about him. He's an 82-game player. These are guys that, Cleveland is really relying on. Indiana's playing a whole bunch of 16-game players. Like, all of these guys that are in their lineup, in their starting lineup, in their rotation, these are playoff level players. And, while they don't have a superstar, they have 9 or 10 guys that, they can just get into the lineup and they can all exist in a playoff atmosphere. They're playing at breakneck speeds and they're just tiring teams out. And they did it to Milwaukee, and they're doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing to Cleveland. And, frankly, last year, if you asked any Boston Celtics fan what was their most difficult series, they're going to point to the Indiana series, even though that they won that series in 5 games. I fully believe that the Pacers can win the Eastern Conference, and I fully believe that the Pacers can give whoever comes out of the Western Conference a real run in the NBA Finals.
Halliburton was hurt against the Celtics last year as well, Tony, to underscore your point. So, look, I'm not ready to go there with them. But like I said, and Rick Carlisle has won a championship. Like since January when he made his rotational adjustments, they are built to beat this Cleveland Cavaliers team. And we'll see because, of course, we want to see Donovan do well. But let's move out west now. And we'll end with the series you're covering. But before we get there, Steph's going to be out a week. So he'll definitely miss Game 3. He'll probably miss Game 4. And then we'll see what happens after that. But, and we're going to talk about the Denver Nuggets championship medal and effort, Game 1 against OKC. And Minnesota did not show that they were ready for this moment. And I didn't mind Chris Finch calling out Ant after the game. Ant had a better second half. He did have 14 boards. But he missed his first 8 shots. He missed his first 3 threes. He was not engaged. And Golden State, that was just an old school. It helps when you get 4 threes from Draymond. It took Jimmy a little bit to get going. Buddy Hield, like a lot of people may not fully understand that Buddy Hield throughout his entire career in college and in the pros has always been an elite shooter. But his growth in this system might allow them to keep this ship afloat while Steph is out. It's going to be difficult. But what do you make of what we saw Game 1 with the Warriors and T-Wolves, and how do you think Golden State can get this done if Steph has to miss more than a couple of games?
I think Steve Kerr is coaching a wonderful playoff. I think that, he's been, just really nails in terms of his rotations, in terms of his feel for his roster, in terms of substitutions in the right spots. In terms of in-series adjustments, he's just been awesome. I can't say enough good things about how well he's coached in these playoffs. Golden State, they're defending at a super high level. I think that they can win this series even, largely without Steph. We'll see what happens. I suspect that Stephen Curry won't play again in this series, and I still think that the Warriors are capable of winning the series. They defend at a super high level. It's one thing to have, a dog like Draymond Green. Now they have 2 of them because they also have Jimmy Butler. And that team just has a mentality that they're going to do, whatever it takes to get it done. I think that, what a lot of people are not talking about is how much Brandon Podziemski has improved. And I think that his improvement as a connector and as a secondary ball handler, playmaker, and shooter has been really big for the roster as a whole. And I think that Golden State's at a point where, if you get on a scale of 1 through 10, sometimes they're going to play at a 10. They're probably not going to play at a 10, all of the time, but they're going to play at an 8, a solid 8, 100% of the time. And to beat them, you have to meet that level. And, Minnesota has been pretty mercurial this season. Like, they've played up to competition. They've played down to competition. It's one of the reasons why that roster, as talented as it is, had been fighting to stay out of the play-in, up into the last day of the regular season. That egg that they laid last night, that's been them, for the entire season. They've gone through a cycle this regular season where they can look like world beaters for 3 or 4 games, and then they can lay eggs for 2 or 3 games. And they look like world beaters against the Los Angeles Lakers, and they laid an egg in Game 1 against the Golden State Warriors. And that's not going to beat the Warriors. You have to consistently play at a certain level. And if Minnesota doesn't figure out a way to do that in this series, Steph or no Steph, Golden State's going to win the series.
All right, moving over to OKC Denver. Of course, you've been covering the Nuggets all year long. And, I'll say into this microphone what I believe to be true, and that is Shea is the MVP and Nikola Jokic is the best player in the world. And I'm okay with that. We are in Salt Lake City where a guy named Karl Malone won a couple of MVPs when a guy named Michael Jordan was playing basketball. Kobe won 1. Okay, the MVP versus best player in the world has always been an interesting conversation. But every year, I just hesitate, even though Oklahoma City all year was awesome, and historic defensively and historic in the net. This is a group that has a mini playoff run a year ago when they swept New Orleans, but then they lost to Dallas in 6. And this is just typically you have to earn your stripes in this league before you're anointed as a champ. Now, I will not go out on a limb to say that I think Denver will win the series, but I'll go back to where we started this conversation. Even though I would love to see our Knicks do this, no part of me believes that Celtics are in trouble. Part of me believes that Oklahoma City got stung a little bit in game 1, and those uppercuts might come back to hurt them a bit. So tell me, Tony, what you saw game 1 and what your thoughts are the rest of the series between OKC and the Denver Nuggets.
Well, I think Denver is more capable of winning this series than the Knicks are of winning the Boston series.
Agreed.
And, the major thing was, if you watch Denver against the LA Clippers, the Clippers really defended Nikola Jokic at a high level. They did something, I've been covering Denver. This is my 3rd year covering Denver, and I've never seen, not even Minnesota last year. The Clippers were the only team that I have seen keep Nikola Jokic off of his spots. Ivica Zubac was the only guy that's been strong enough to keep Nikola Jokic from getting to his spots. And he made life miserable for Jokic. Jokic still put up his numbers. He still had a really good series, but he wasn't the best player in the series for the entire 7 games. And, by the end of the series, Jokic was exhausted because he had to deal with Zubac, and he had to deal with a bunch of double teams from a bunch of 6'9", 6'8" guys who were long and athletic wings. He just could, outside of one game, he had game 4 where he had 38 and 21 to where, he looked like Nikola Jokic, like best player in the world, Nikola Jokic. Those other 6 games, the Clippers were really, really, really good at defending him. And the major difference between that series and this series is Oklahoma City does not have an answer for Jokic. Chet Holmgren cannot keep Jokic off his spots. Isaiah Hartenstein cannot keep Jokic off his spots. He can get to any spot at any point, at any time that he wants to. And those double teams, they can send a bunch of double teams, but those guys are 6'4" and 6'5", and he can look over him, as opposed to the double teams coming from Nick Batum and Derrick Jones Jr. And Kawhi Leonard, who are all 6'7" to 6'9", long and athletic with big and long arms. And you saw it in game 1. Jokic dominated. He had 42 and 22, and it was really effortless. It was an effortless 42. He expended less effort on Monday night, scoring 42 and grabbing 22 rebounds than he expended at any point in the Clippers series. And that's the one thing that Oklahoma City doesn't have an answer for. And we're going to see if that can carry Denver through an entire series, because they had no business. The Nuggets had no business winning game 1. But the fact is that they stole game 1. Now, now the pathway is the same as the Knicks for against Boston, which is you go back to Ball Arena, you win 1 game of 3 in between 3 and 4. Now you extend it to a 6-game series, and if you get it to a 7th game, anything can happen in that 7th game. I still think that Oklahoma City has a bunch of matchup advantages. They can't keep SGA out of the lane. The Nuggets are, employing a defensive strategy of laying off of some shooters. But Lou Dort is a really good shooter. He's turned himself into a really good shooter. Alex Caruso made a bunch of threes on Monday. The Thunder forced a lot of turnovers, and they sped Denver up a lot, especially with Jokic in the minutes that Jokic wasn't on the floor. And that's how they got to a double-digit lead. So, we'll see what happens in the series. But the fact that Denver was able to steal game 1 in the manner in which it did, I think that could be something that Oklahoma City comes to regret as the series goes on.
Real quick, are you debating people on Twitter the cinematic career of Ralph Macchio? Am I seeing this correctly?
I don't know if it's a debate. I just said that he made a 50-year empire off of one movie. Do you disagree with that?
I don't. I just was looking for some of these basketball takes and some of your articles on your timeline, and I ran into a debate about Ralph Macchio juxtaposed to Sly Stallone and Vin Diesel. I was not expecting to run into that on the timeline, Tone.
Well, somebody said that Sly Stallone made a 50-year, did the same, and that's just not true because of course he had Rocky and that's the movie franchise, but he also had Rambo. And he also had a bunch of movies that, he's like one of my favorite Sylvester Stallone movie is not any of the Rocky movies, is not any of the Rambo movies. My favorite Sylvester Stallone movie is Cliffhanger from 1993. You remember Cliffhanger?
Of course.
Like that's my favorite Sylvester Stallone movie. So, I was talking like Ralph Macchio truly, he had the Karate Kid 1, Karate Kid 2, Karate Kid 3. Then he has Cobra Kai. He's made a 50-year fortune, a 50-year fortune off of just one movie and one movie franchise, and I thought that was dope.
Fair enough. Just was not expecting to see that on the timeline. Tony, will end with the news that broke locally that caught some people off guard. The fact of the matter is Will Hardy had already had his year 4 and year 5 options picked up, so he was not coming up on the end of his deal, and now the end of his deal is 2031. Your thoughts on the Jazz and Will Hardy agreeing to this contract extension?
I think Will's one of the best coaches in the league, and and I was really surprised at some of the pushback I saw, because I think that he is really, really, really a phenomenal coach. And, I think that the minute that the Jazz give him a roster to which he can win with, I think that the Jazz are going to win at a high level. And, and I think that with Will Hardy, I think that the Jazz are going to compete for NBA championships at some point, because I think he's that good a coach, and I think he's that good a ceiling raiser. And I think that, one day, we're going to look up and, the front, his roster is going to have a bunch of really good guys, and, and they're going to take off because of Will, and that team is going to start winning at a really high level. And frankly, I think that the Jazz recognize that, and, and I think that that's why they locked him in.
All right, Tone, tell people where they can get your work as we're following the playoffs before I set you loose.
You can get me at The Athletic, and you can get all my hot takes at T. Jones on the NBA.
Where are you right now, by the way?
I am in Oklahoma City.
Well, I'm sorry about that, but enjoy it.
There was a tornado siren this morning, a monthly tornado siren, and I just jumped under my bed.
Well, you stay safe, buddy. You travel well, and we'll see you soon, okay?
Thank you.
Tony Jones from The Athletic believes the Indiana Pacers can win the world championship, believes Ralph Macchio built a 50-year career off of one movie. Only Tony will be debating Karate Kid hot takes on his timeline. Stop by today, courtesy of our friends at IFA Country Stores. They have everything you need to care for your lawn, no matter its size or shape. Their 4+ lawn care program can promote healthy green grass this summer. Visit with their excuse me. Woo! Visit with their team of Pro Turf and landscape consultants that help provide products and services to local baseball, soccer fields, golf courses, parks, and other city properties throughout Utah. It's the same knowledge and care that they share with you about your yard, only at IFA and online at ifa.coop. Coming up next, Tusks Up. Neil Smith stops by to do some hockey. Chris Comrani live in studio, then Andy Larson later on. Busy show. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. Chris Camerati joins us live in studio. CK with his weekly visit from The Athletic. Andy Larson, Salt Lake Tribune, will join us coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. We'll get to some Jazz stuff. We'll do some NBA playoffs. Let's do some NHL playoffs now, though. Some hockey with our friend Neil Smith, who I owe a very big apology to for having a ditch last Friday as we had Deontay Wilder on the program. So, Neil, I'm very sorry about last week. Thank you for your time today, sir. How are you?
I'm real good. You never have to apologize to me. I understand radio business, and if you get a guy like that you got a chance to get on, you got to do it.
Well, I appreciate your understanding. And, of course, you're joining us on somewhat of a historic day out this way where we now know the name of our hockey team in perpetuity. It will be the Utah Mammoth, Neil. The Utah Hockey Club is no more. It is henceforth and forever known as the Utah Mammoth. What are your thoughts, sir?
Well, I'm a traditionalist, so I normally don't like names with no S on the end, but I say the logo is really cool, and the colors are good. They're the same colors as they wore this year, and it's a strong, big. It comes from the elephant type of creature, and it looks strong, and that's the main thing is have a strong name. So I approve of that for sure.
All right, fair enough. Before we get to round two, you and I haven't spoke for a minute, and we had just had some unbelievable round one series, as we always do in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So let's start out west, where the St. Louis Blues, man, they had the Jets on the ropes, didn't they? And the Jets were able to survive. I believe it was the latest game-tying goal in the history of Game 7. And they were able to get it done. So give me your thoughts on that Jets-Blues series that saw Winnipeg win it 4-3.
I thought it was an incredibly entertaining series. St. Louis was played great. They continued on their winning streak that you and I have talked about at the end of the season. Each of those two teams won all their home games. And at the end of the day, that's why you fight to be first, because you want to get 4 home games as opposed to the opponent's 3 home games. And this one, it really mattered. So it was an amazing ending to the Game 7, where they scored those goals with their goaltender on the bench and the net empty. You can't ask for more exciting finish to a series than that one.
Additionally, we saw just another knockdown, drag-out series between two teams that I know you liked an awful lot, the Avalanche and the Stars. Needed overtime and an incredible finish. Both those Game 7s had incredible finishes, and the Stars ultimately were able to get that win 4-2 and send the Avs home. So what'd you make of that round one series?
Oh, it was a great series, and you said it right, 2 heavyweights, because both of those teams are Stanley Cup contenders. We've said this all year. And Dallas, to be able to knock out the Avalanche with Heiskanen and Robertson out of their lineup, and Avalanche being really healthy. But isn't it just poetic justice that the guy that did the most damage to the Avalanche was the former Avalanche star, Mikko Rantanen, who took Game 6 all by himself, and took Game 7 and really played well and did some real damage in Game 5 in the amount of points he got. He was back to being a superstar, but now with a green and white uniform on instead of the eggshell and blue that the Avalanche wear. So I thought that was a really entertaining subplot in this game, in this 7-game series.
Any surprise to see the Oilers take care of the Kings? And the Oilers have, I think, 5 straight comeback wins, which is, I think I read it's tied for the most in the history of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I think most people thought the Kings would win that series, but the Oilers advance in 6. Surprise there?
Yeah, my prediction was that that the Lakers, the LA Kings would finally win a series against Edmonton. This was the 4th year in a row. I think I misspoke when I was on with you 2 weeks ago and said it was the 5th. It's not. It was the 4th. And the LA Kings got a 2-0 lead, winning both their home games, but then fell apart and lost 4 straight. And then after the season was over and their general manager has stepped aside now, Rob Blake, and going to do other things or stay with the family or something. So now they're looking for a GM. The LA Kings are. But for Edmonton, who move on to play the Vegas Golden Knights and actually have played one game and won it, that number 97 and number 29, boy, oh boy, when they're coming at you all night, they're really hard to stop.
I know we've already seen a game, as you referenced, that went to Edmonton, but what do you make of the rest of the series? How do you think it's going to play out?
I think it's going to be a good series. It's probably going to be a longer one, and I can't really tell you who's going to win. It would seem now like Edmonton is, because they won the first game in Vegas, and therefore they have home ice advantage. And when you have Draisaitl and McDavid, that's a pretty good start. And then you've got Bouchard, and you've got Hyman, and you've got all these machines out there for Edmonton. But Vegas is a champion. They won only a couple of years ago. Mark Stone last night, the captain, got a couple of goals early. It was 2-0. Made Edmonton do what they do and score 3 goals in the third to win that. I'm sorry, not 3 goals, but do what they do to win it. Later on in the third period, and so I think it's going to be a real push back and forth. But again, Edmonton stole home ice away from Vegas by winning last night.
What about Jet Stars? I mean, ultimately we'll see what happens tonight, but 2 really good teams. The Jets have been the best team in hockey all year long, but of course, Stars coming off that win against the Avs, and they may have a little momentum. How do you think tonight goes, and how do you think the series goes?
Well, I know that Heiskanen's not playing, and that's a big blow to Dallas. As I said earlier, he's one of the top defensemen in the league, and certainly the top defenseman for Dallas. But I think this all hinges on how does Connor Hellebuyck handle this round of the playoffs. We all know that he didn't play as well in the first round as he had during the regular season, and I think that got into his head. And he did say, I read a quote where he said it was a huge relief for him personally that they won that series, because I guess he was thinking he had let his team down. Well, now it's a brand new series. The guy on the other end of the ice, Ottinger, is a real good goalie as well. But it's Hellebuyck that carried the Winnipeg Jets to the President's Trophy this year. He's going to win his second Vezina trophy in a row as a top goalie in the NHL. But he's got to do it in the playoffs. He has to come through for them, because that's why Winnipeg's a first-place team, because they had all these great pieces, and they've all got to keep playing well. Now, they got a couple of injuries. We don't know if they're going to come back or not. Mark Scheifele is certainly an important piece to that team. And Josh Morrissey went out also in that last series against the Avalanche, and he's their Heiskanen. So that remains to be seen.
Out east, we've got the Maple Leafs and the Panthers. Toronto already won game 1. Of course, the Panthers coming off that, well, technically it was an upset, but they won their round 1 series against the Lightning 4-1. So again, Toronto has game 1. Can the Panthers get back into this? How do you think that series goes?
I think they'll definitely get back into it. I think that the Panthers will probably win tonight. Stolarz, the number 1 goalie for Toronto, isn't playing. So Joseph Woll will have to be back in net again. And Joseph Woll is not as good as Bobrovsky in the other end of the ice. Bobrovsky didn't have a great game 1 by his own standards. But I think you'll see that change tonight. And I don't think Florida will allow this series to go back to Sunrise, Florida, down 2-0, and Toronto having won both their home games. I think Florida's going to push real hard tonight to even this series up, because, as I said about those other series, Toronto, it's a big deal if you can go down to Florida with a 2-0 cushion. I mean, Toronto now, that's pretty good, because there's the next game, the third game. If Toronto wins that, they basically got the series. So I think you're going to see Florida really push hard tonight.
Other series, Caps Hurricanes, of course, Carolina already has 1 win there, and wondering if Ovechkin, after breaking Gretzky's record, can put a little cherry on top of that by advancing and maybe winning another cup. But how do you think this series goes down, Neil?
It's tough to have watched last night's game and think that Washington is going to go back to being who they were, but I do think they will be. Last night's game that they played against Carolina was horrible for Washington, horrible. They were outchanced by Carolina ridiculously. They had a horrible first period of the Washington Capitals in their own building, and they really played flat the whole night. And while the Hurricanes threw everything they could at the Washington Capitals, and had it not been for the heroics of Logan Thompson, the goaltender for Washington, this score could have been a lot worse. Hurricanes outshot Washington 33-14 in the game, including 12-5 in the first period, and then 11-3 in the third period. And I remind you, Spence, you're playing in your own building. You're number one in the Eastern Conference, and you allow the opponent to come in and throttle you 12-5 in the first period and 11-3 in the third. It did go to overtime. Carolina was able to win. So if I'm Washington, I'm saying, okay, that was our rock bottom game last night. That was our rock bottom. They came at us with everything they had and still had to go to overtime to beat us. So come on, pull up our bootstraps and let's get going. And I imagine that Washington will make this a long series.
All right, if I had to ask you right now, your favorite to win the West, your favorite to win the East, who would you say and why?
My favorite to win the West has already been eliminated, so it shows you what I know. I thought Colorado would be the favorite to win. I guess I got to say now that, Dallas Stars are my favorite because the way they played against Colorado shorthanded and still rose to the occasion and played really well. I don't think that Edmonton or Vegas can beat them. And in the East, I'm going with Florida still. I still think the Florida Panthers, at the end of the day, are going to win 2 cups in a row, having won last year. I think they're going to win again this year. I'm putting that out there for you, Spence, real early so that I can either get some kudos at the end or, be ribbed about it. But I really do think the Florida Panthers are the best playoff team in the entire league, and they'll have to go up against the Dallas Stars in the final.
All right, Neil, before I set you loose, a really fun week here. We already talked about the name change for the hockey club, but before we get to the Utah Hockey Club, now Utah Mammoths' luck in the lottery, how about the Islanders winning the NHL Draft Lottery for the first time since 2009, a club you're very familiar with? Yes,
I am very familiar with them, and they moved up from position 10 to position 1. And I don't think, nobody could see it coming because it's not something that it's the luck of the draw, right? With the way the balls come out. But that's going to be something. That's something that franchise really needs. They need, and I hope they draft a superstar player. You never know until 2 years after you've drafted him whether or not he's going to be that guy. But for the New York Islanders in that market, it would be wonderful if they could get a star player. They got one once in 2009 when they got John Tavares, and he ended up being their captain, their star of their team, but then walked away and went to Toronto and now resides there back in his hometown. But, it's a miracle, really, when this stuff happens, when you jump from 10 to 1 like the Islanders did. And, I was talking to their very first overall pick, which was Dennis Potvin. I talked to him yesterday on the podcast, and he was saying how important it is for the Islanders, to get people to understand that they're really building towards something. So I hope for their sake they are.
All right, before I set you loose, the Islanders with a lot of luck and the Utah Hockey Club, now the Utah Mammoth, with a lot of luck as well. So our franchise here moves up 10 spots to secure the 4th overall pick in the draft. Draft's coming up on June the 27th and the 28th. From what I've read, there's no odds-on favorite number 1 prospect, but 4 or 5 really good players. So put yourself, Neil, as somebody who has been a roster constructor in pro hockey at the highest of levels, winning the Stanley Cup, in the shoes of Bill Armstrong. You have a lot of optionality, and Bill spoke to the market yesterday. Talked about what a game changer it is. So you've got the option of adding another young piece to a team that's the third youngest team in pro hockey, but you also have the option of utilizing this chip to maybe execute a trade for a team that is maybe a few steps behind in a rebuild, but isn't drafting ahead of the hockey club, because the hockey club here, I should say the Mammoth, I'll get used to it, is drafting ahead of several teams that are a couple of steps behind them in a rebuild process. So what do you do if you're Bill Armstrong? Is it simply best prospect? Do you utilize it for a trade, expedite the growth? What do you think Bill does with a number 4 overall pick?
Well, I don't think he trades it because of their building plan. I think he keeps it. And the way you do it, or the way that I did it, was that you know who the top 4 guys are, kids that are up for the draft. And what you say, the top 3, you say these are the top 3, and this is the guy we'll probably get. But if any of these 3 is available at pick 4, is there anybody we wouldn't want to pick? And that's how you do it, so that it's pretty elementary, that you just have the 4 names and you wait to see. But remember, at number 4, you're going to get a first-line player at some point. Maybe not the first year because he's 18, but you will get a first-line player in 2 or 3 years of development. So that's pretty tough to trade away unless you're getting something so good that you can't resist. So I'd be surprised if Bill traded the pick. I think he's just going to concentrate on who can we get, let's watch some video, let's talk at length for a long time about who these kids are and who would really fit best with our team.
Neil, thank you, sir. Tell all of our listeners, fans of the Utah Hockey Club, now the Utah Mammoth, where they can go find your podcast.
You know, I was looking up today on a site that shows where all the listeners come from, and we do have some Salt Lake City subscribers, but I just encourage you to subscribe to the NHL Wraparound, and we're doing it every day right now with Stanley Cup dates, we call it, and we do NHL Wraparound the show on Mondays. This week we had Craig Button, who is famous in Canada on TSN, who's an expert, and came on and did a prediction show with us. It was really fun. And the one thing you can be guaranteed is we always have great guests on the show on the Monday. And then we do a lot of updating for folks during the week. So come on, Salt Lake City, give us a like and a subscribe.
Love it, Neil. Thanks for the time, my friend. Have a great week, and we'll chat soon.
Yeah, chat soon. Be safe.
All right, Neil Smith, former general manager of the Rangers, the Islanders, high-level scout for the Detroit Red Wings. Go check out his podcast, NHL Wraparound, for some good hockey knowledge and a preview of the draft coming up, where the Utah Hockey Club, well, now the Utah Mammoth, tusks up, will draft 4th overall. Neil stops by today, courtesy of our friends at Outlaw Distilling. They are a new partner here on the ESPN Sports Network. Outlaw Distillery, a homegrown, grain-to-glass, nitty-gritty whiskey, vodka, rum, and moonshine distillery right here in Salt Lake County. Outlaw Distillery, Utah-grown, with so much history here of cowboys, outlaws, mining, and more. Outlaw has everything on the spirit spectrum. From open in 2015 as only the 4th distillery in the state of Utah, deeply rooted in Utah history and tradition. Even the name Outlaw is inspired by the legendary characters such as Butch Cassidy and the Outlaw Trail, which serves as a primary transportation route for many of the notorious Wild West outlaws. The vision for the Outlaw Distillery is clear: help show the world that some of the best spirits can come from one of the least expected places here in Utah. All right, we'll catch a break. Chris Camerani is live in studio for an entire hour. Then we're going to bring in Andy today, Andy Larson. A lot to do on a Wednesday edition of the show. You're halfway through your work week, one day closer to the weekend on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. So keep it right here on ESPN 700.
But Phantom Planet, who has Jason Schwartzman.
Ah, okay.
Back in the day, I think this song came out in 2002.
Okay, deep cut. I will say I never watched the OC because I was boycotting the program because they completely ripped it off from our preferred reality television of the Laguna Beach and later the Hills.
I'm with you, but Phantom Planet. This song came out 2002, which was my junior year of high school, right as the Laguna Beach, OC, Hollister and Company, all of it was really kabooming. So and Schwartzman, he's our guy. We take dead aim at the rich boys.
Still on my Twitter profile, ironically enough, and people don't understand it, which is great. Schwartzman, perennially underrated. Do you keep track of any of the Laguna Beach Hills? Like Kristen Cavallari has this new podcast, and she was on Kimmel the other night. And I love Jimmy Kimmel. I think he's hilarious. So I caught a portion of that interview. Apparently she had a reunion where Tally was pretty mean to her. She got all the Laguna Beach folk back. I have not watched it. Do you keep track of any of it?
I do not. All I know is that she was married to Jay Cutler at one point.
Yes, she was.
But no longer.
And those two, if those two crazy kids can't make it, CK, none of us have a shot. Except for you, happily married.
Yeah.
With raising a young boy. How's our lad Leo?
He's great, man. Yeah, we went to Moab last weekend, and he got so much dirt in his mouth and diaper and clothes and all the things.
Did what you're supposed to do in Moab.
Correct.
Have you placed a soccer ball at his feet yet?
Oh, yeah.
You have?
We have a pair of little kid goals, and he's a lefty. And
RSL needs a left back, man.
Amanda refuses to believe that he's developed a handedness or footedness this early, but the writing's on the wall.
Fair enough. That's good. Is he also left-handed?
Yeah.
So he left-handed. There's something that just looks cooler about a lefty taking a jump shot. Like Damon Stoudemire, Kenny Anderson back in the day. I was always jealous of left-handed point guards. I think there's something cool about people that are left-handed. I don't know why.
Anthony Mason. Big
what?
Base. Come on, man.
Porter, what's going? Did you tip him?
Deep
What
cut.
is Anthony Mason pull from Chris Comrani?
Greg Anthony.
Love that.
And Greg Anthony.
Keep going.
You want to talk some playoffs, bro? You've been dialed in? Have you been dialed into any NBA playoffs?
I watched. Oh, what did I watch? I watched Game 1 of Boston, New York the other night.
All right, that was fun.
Which was cool.
Yeah.
And then what was I doing last night? I was keeping tabs on the Pacers-Cavs game, and the Cavs were up like 9 points with like 30 seconds to go, and I was like, okay. And then I went on with my day and then opened it up, and surprisingly enough, the Pacers are known to do that, apparently.
They are. Are you ready for my Donovan Mitchell analogy?
Yeah.
You ready, Porter?
I am ready.
Donovan Mitchell is a golden doodle.
Okay.
You can win a lot of things with golden doodles. You can take golden doodles to dog shows. Everybody loves a golden doodle. Golden doodle, big hit. Everyone loves the golden doodle, right?
I guess I'm following.
The Pacers have pit bulls.
Oh.
To win in the playoffs, you got to have pit bulls.
Interesting.
Everyone loves the golden doodle, but when it comes time to win the fight, you got to have dogs on the other side.
Enforcers.
Donovan went to Greenwich Country Day. If Donovan's from New York, I'm from New York. He is a golden doodle, okay?
Well, are we going to provide context that they were missing like 3 of their best players?
Sure, but this is not just a one-off because Donovan has these 48, 50-point games, and he's awesome.
Empty calories.
To win at this level, I'm just not sure that he's ever going to be that guy. And like I said, I hear this narrative like Donovan can't get it done in the playoffs. I'm like, dude, I've seen him drop half 100 in playoff games multiple times. But last night at the end of the game, we had a Donovan Mitchell turnover. We had a Donovan Mitchell offensive foul. We had a Donovan Mitchell missed box out, which led to a rebound that led to the game-winning three-point shot. To be fair, to your point, they're without 3 of their top 4 players. They need Darius Garland back badly. But when it comes down to it, the physical toll of winning this late in the playoffs, we just haven't seen it from him, and he's 28 years old.
So is that because we're conflating the idea or the ceiling of who or what Donovan is? Like, have we fallen in love with the unfair comparisons of Dwayne Wade from 10 years ago? Like maybe he is Dame.
Maybe.
Honestly, like are we putting him on a pedestal or on a level or a level of caliber of player that he actually is not.
That's fair. That's fair. And, to simply acknowledge who he is to acknowledge that he's awesome. And that this year he's played at a level that we never saw here in Salt Lake. And part of that's aging. 28 years old, he's right smack in the middle of his prime. And he made some plays last night that were jaw-dropping. And when he gets going, he's in a very rare group of players that can change the game by himself offensively. But at times, there's a little Westbrook stuff with him where he just dominates the ball. His teammates stop moving, and they just watch him do his thing. And oftentimes, his thing is transcendent and really special. But when the moment gets really big like this and you advance, he's never been out of the second round. And I don't think he's getting out of the second round this year. Is part of that because they're not healthy? For sure. But I just wonder how this is landing with Donovan, where it's like, here we go again. He'll be first-team All-NBA. I bet he finishes top 5 in MVP voting. He has no chance of winning it. And once again, he's going to be sent home in the second round.
Okay. Donovan needs to be the second-best player on a championship team.
I believe that to be true, yes.
And he is easily their best player in Cleveland, as he was here.
Yeah, and so, he might be a top 20 guy. Probably is a top 20 player in the NBA.
So if you're looking at the last few champions in the NBA, me as a basketball guy, I would probably take both of Boston's wings over Donovan Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
Jokic obviously is the GOAT at the moment. Jamal, you would maybe even take Jamal Murray over Donovan. I know he's a little older, a little more injury prone, but my point is that in the NBA you have to have 2 elite players and then a few very good players, and I think Donovan is kind of in between.
As a basketball guy,
yeah,
Chris, I'll bring you into the topic that we talked to Aaron about last week. And I admit that the easy thing to do is watch Gobert have a 2020 closeout game and watch Donovan play the way he's played in the playoffs. And even Mike Conley knock down a couple of shots, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker play well. The easy thing to do is wonder whether or not it was because you hear this thing in pro basketball this year after Nico Harrison traded Luka Doncic, everybody had the same reaction. You do not trade a 25-year-old superstar in his prime. I'm not saying Donovan's Luka, but the Jazz did that. In a place like Salt Lake City, where it's just difficult in the modern day and age of the NBA, and we just have the data. I know they traded Darren. Hayward leaves. If you can't keep the white guy that likes to play video games at night in Salt Lake, I'm not sure what we're doing. The Donovan Rudy thing blows up. John and Carl didn't make the NBA Finals until their mid-30s. And in 1988, they took the Lakers to 7 games. In 1989, they were swept by the Warriors. It's a different time. It's a different era. John and Carl were different animals. But can you imagine Scott Layden breaking that team down in 1989 and instead of allowing them to learn lessons into their mid-30s? Yes, we get into the whole, would Donovan stay? What's happening behind the scenes? But it's an interesting thought exercise, watching all these ex-Jazz guys playing so well in the playoffs and watching the Jazz right now just being in no man's land with an unserious approach to winning.
Well, my counter to that would be, in a hypothetical world, if the Jazz decide to keep Rudy Gobert and trade Donovan, and you get Lauri Markkanen, does a team of an aging Mike Conley, shot-happy Jordan Clarkson, Lauri Markkanen, Rudy Gobert, is that team better than the Warriors with Draymond Green, Steph Curry, and Jimmy Butler?
No.
Are they better than the Memphis Grizzlies?
Probably not.
So you're still – the Western Conference is so good. It's gotten better, frankly, since the Jazz broke it down. So, in that hypothetical alternate universe, the Jazz are probably play-in team at best.
Probably.
And I'm of the mind that the worst thing you could possibly do is be in the mushy middle, be a 6 to 10 team. It used to be you don't want to be a 5 to 8 team. Now you don't want to be a 6 to 10 team. And I understand that. Yeah, you could maybe, manipulate or trick fans into believing that a 48-win team in the Western Conference has a shot. But it's empty calories, man. It is a thought exercise that is fun to think about, but it was a team that ultimately didn't work. You can say that maybe the Jazz should have made Donovan stay another year, or they could have been more patient and waited for a different deal. But I don't know. I understand the picks thing is kind of looking bad at the moment, considering where Cleveland and Minnesota are. But all things considered, the fact that the Jazz did get Lauri Markkanen back, which is in theory, a building block piece. I just don't think the Jazz were going to get anywhere as currently constituted back then. I just don't.
PSG takes care of Arsenal today.
Did you watch that game yesterday?
I saw highlights. I was busy doing radio.
One of the best home and away ties that I've ever seen.
So we've got PSG Inter Milan coming up in Munich.
Are we going?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's arrange it. That's where Byron plays, so 70,000 people. I know I ask you this all the time. I don't know that we really have an accurate frame of reference for just how big a tournament like this is, right?
Well, the difference is because you're just talking about the elite of several different countries.
The best of the best.
The best of the best. And generally, when we're talking about where we are, most of the best come to us. Soccer is the exception.
Yeah, I mean, every time every time I have a chance to tune into a UEFA Champions League game, I'm just blown away at the spectacle. And I don't know that we have an equivalent here in our country. I mean, the easy thing to say is the American football, right?
It'd be like having multiple Super Bowls per year.
Yeah.
Like, because you're talking about certain teams in certain countries having runs that only happen for them once in a very long time. Ironically, I mean, since we're breaking down European soccer, PSG finally getting to the final without Neymar, Messi, and Mbappe.
The worst FIFA team to ever play against.
Is that the Ewing theory?
It could be. I like it.
But, yeah, I mean, traditionally in the last decade, we've been treated to having a fairly star-studded final with the Messis and Barcelonas and the Ronaldos with Madrid, Lewandowski at Bayern. I anticipate a very fun final, like Inter Milan, Barcelona, like I said, was one of the best home and away matches I've ever seen. 7-6 aggregate, like that is some Spence and CK 2020 FIFA, like
shout out
back and forth.
I still think you need to write a piece on that time where FIFA saved our lives during COVID. I don't know if 7-6 aggregate was accurate because I had a hard time scoring on. JP was the worst, dude. I don't know how
he plays the Italian way.
I don't know how many 1-0 losses I had to John Paul.
Yeah.
I remember I beat him 2-1 once, and I had to take it to the corner and waste time, and he was so angry. I'm like, dude, you beat me 9 out of 10 games. Just give me one. Are you playing any FIFA anymore? I haven't played FIFA in forever.
No.
I think I told you this. I downloaded the new PGA game. They're like, hey, you can't play this on the console that you've had for 15 years.
It's time to spend $500 more.
I don't know that I want to do that because I just don't play. I'm not the dude that says I'm too old or advanced or cool to play video. I wish I played more video games. I just don't anymore.
Be outside.
Doing other things.
I mean, like at the time, we just were really allotted no other option, so it was
like,
fun to lean into.
Hey, man, you want to play FIFA? What are you doing? Like, yes, let's see if we can kill 30 to 45 minutes of this existence where none of us are allowed to leave the house.
Correct.
Falk never really got overly involved. It was more me and you and John Paul.
Yeah.
Played Andy a couple of times. Andy's like annoyingly good at video games, so
Are we surprised?
No. No, we're not. Shout out, Chloe, from the Painted Pony. All right, we'll do the Cam Rising. I want your thoughts on Cam Rising, the announcement that he has retired from football in a minute. But since we're got a couple of minutes left in this segment, let's just stay in the soccer space and talk about the latest with RSL. They go to Vancouver. They lose. I guess Vancouver's the best team in the league. The road continues. The transfer portal has come and gone. Transfer window. Is it not the portal? Oh, wait, that's college athletics. The primary transfer window in Major League Soccer has come and gone. Talked to a couple people at the club, both on and off air, and they anticipate the summer window bringing this striker that they thought that they had dialed in. Of course, they grabbed the striker who decided he didn't want to live here, and then the stuff with Bozanic, our guy, falls through with the Portuguese club. We saw Big Willie goals for a minute. No goals for Big Willie yet. Johnny Russell is hurt. He's not playing this weekend.
He got hurt already?
Of course he did. He hasn't played soccer in 7 months, and he's like 37. I mean, what do you expect? So, we find ourselves in kind of an auspicious spot with RSL, and the road continues. What are your thoughts on where we're at with the club?
I guess I would just ask, what does RSL do well? They Diego Luna well sometimes.
They Emeka Anelli well at times.
Emeka Anelli well at times, but I never thought that in a game that's so consisted on the moving parts working in unison, I didn't think that one player would be so integral to how a team plays, and that is Andres Gomez, who is now playing in France and not playing a lot, by the way. I wonder if RSL is wondering, do you want to come back on loan? Come tear it up like you used to.
Okay.
But even more than Chicho, RSL doesn't have a player who can run by people. They are a very slow team in the attack. And if we're being honest, the additions they made in the wake of selling Andres Gomez and even selling Chicho Arango, the Dominic Markzuk move, he's had some flashes, but he's nowhere near to where Andres Gomez was last year. Lachlan Brook, your guy.
Locky.
Locky.
That's what I call him.
Locky B. I don't know if he's tallied a goal or an assist in MLS
He
play.
barely plays.
So it is hard to get a sense of where this team is going outside of and on top of that, your top two center backs are hurt. I was out of town. I don't know how long Brian Vera's out. Have you heard
I don't. He's not that hit he took.
Yeah.
He's not playing this weekend. Glad is healthy now.
Yeah.
I don't know what the deal is with Kobe.
Yeah.
Kobe Henry.
Yeah. So, the Miller Group kind of puffed their chest out when they made this deal and to buy the club and said we're willing to spend the money necessary to make this team competitive. And I would say, if you're going to do that in this upcoming summer transfer window, it needs to be for guys who cost more than $2 to $4 million with a club in Portugal that's sketchy as hell. You need to go after guys either in Mexico or South America or Europe who want to come here and be the face of the club the same way Chicho did once upon a time.
And you didn't even land on the biggest target, which for me is Diogo.
And Diogo that. So Diogo, Locky, your guy, and Markzuk. I should have looked up their combined statistics coming into today because I knew we were going to talk about RSL. It is they've probably combined scored less than 5 goals, and it just doesn't work, man. And this is what I told you last summer when they brought this guy in. It's you never know when a guy's going to come in and tear it up or if he's going to be a bust. And it's hard in this league. It probably is a little harder on a guy like Diogo considering he's now kind of playing in the shadow of Diego Luna, rightfully so because Diego's better and he has more command of the game. But it is your guy Johnny Goals, man, history is riddled with guys who've come into this league with great expectations and haven't necessarily made a great impact. But then there's also guys that you've never heard of that come in and tear it up. So can RSL go out and find the next Hani Mukhtar in Nashville? That's what they need because until they get a guy like that, they're just going to be middle of the road / whatever below middle of the road is, but it's bottom at the table.
Diogo and Dom Markzuk have the same amount of goals as Sam Junka, their backup left back.
1.
A goal.
This year.
Singular goal.
Yep.
And Trey came on the show, our guy Trey, and his whole spin was Diogo sees the game 2 or 3 steps ahead of his teammates. And so that's why the production hasn't been there. I'm like, okay, hold on. You're telling me that he's too advanced and too good for, because I got to be honest, man, he has not been very good at all. And the thing about last year is Diogo's added in the summer transfer window. So he's got 8-9 games to prove who he is. And so the walking line from the club was he needs a preseason with my guy Pobbs, good vibes immaculate. And we'll see the production go through the roof after this. And he has been no better this year than he was last year.
Well, and if we're being honest, the club was forced to roll into this season with a guy who is now suspended in the USL. Your guy, Forrester Iago.
Forrester got
For
suspended?
kicking a guy in the face.
Bad luck. Bad luck.
Ariath Piol, I think, has 1 goal, but after, like, he just doesn't seem like they went bargain bin shopping at the depth of the bargain bin. And again, I don't think RSL needs to go out and spend $20 million to bring in the dude in Cincinnati, or go out and, try to rebuild Barcelona the way Miami did. But there is a way that this can be done at a decent price, but you have to have ownership being willing to be like, hey, you get $6 to $8 million for a forward, you get $3 to $5 million for another winger, go out and get them. And I don't know if this front office has been allotted that opportunity ever, because we all talk about the Chicho transfer as kind of this, bellwether moment for the club. That was only $6 million. And that was 2.5 years ago now. And the league is just leaving this club behind if they do not do anything.
Are you watching The Secret Lives of Mormon Housewives on Hulu?
Oh, yeah.
Season 2 coming up?
Oh, it's coming up?
May the 18th.
All right.
Well,
that's
you're tuned in?
That's my jam.
Okay.
Come on, man.
I did not watch season 1, and I actually have a tie to that program.
Go ahead.
I'll tell you who it is during the break.
Oh, wow.
Well, it's,
The opposite of a tease.
Well, it's caused some
consternation,
some family drama. That's why I'm not watching it. Kind of stay out of it. All right, last thing here. So, new ownership with the club. The Miller family has taken over the majority ownership share. Blitzer group still involved. Not sure what that's going to look like. Do you think there's any chance that they change the ethos of we are a developmental club? Or is that one of the things that you think was appealing to the Millers when they were – because I get it. I understand it. I'll never be on board. I don't like it. I never will. I understand why you do it. But you develop a really good player, and my old American dumb sports brain says, I want that player to play for us. Yes, there are exceptions. If Diego's good enough to play in Europe and that's what he wants to do and you can get 15, 18 mil, I understand it. But do you think the new ownership group – any chance they roll in here and say, okay, because the Millers for years, as stewards of the Jazz, they oversaw competitive teams more often than not. And if this model only breeds moderate competitive levels, do you think they take a look at it?
I think there's a world in which you can be both. I think the Philadelphia Union is an in-league example of an organization that has developed elite talent in the last 5 years. I mean, I think the Aronson brothers, who are in the national team pool now, came through their academy. There's a kid named Kevin Sullivan who was signed by Man City, who's part of their academy that's going to go over to Man City soon. I know RSL made a trade of some sort for some young kid who was in their academy system. But, I mean, RSL's – I can't remember how many people they've sold out, like homegrown guys that they've sold for a lot of money in recent years, but it's not a lot. So, like, to your point, if you can sign players, bring them through your academy system and get them to your first team, get them playing statistically, like impressing people, and then maybe you have some clubs overseas who want to pay for them, great. But like RSL has not really been able to do that. And their homegrown players have been the likes of, Justin Glad, Andrew Brody, like these types of guys who have come through the old RSL Arizona system, and they've served their purpose, but I just don't know. Like, if you're talking about our state as a whole, like we are kind of a developmental state, even professionally and collegiately. Like Utah and BYU, I guess Dabanza is kind of the exception, but like historically, like you're going to have to go after guys that pretty much everyone else in the country is not that interested in, develop them. The Jazz, the same deal historically through the draft. I guess for the Millers, like I'm sure having the Harriman complex was tantalizing, having all the infrastructure in place already. But like if you're going to get butts in the seats and convince this fan base that they're going to be good and fun again, you have to be able to straddle that line.
Well said. All right, time now for the Festival of Tees, ESPN Festival of Tees, powered by the Utah Golf Association. Each day of spring, we are giving away rounds of golf to the best courses in the state. Listen to the Down and Dirty with Scott Mitchell, the Sean O'Connell Show, and this program, The Drive with Spence Checketts, from 2 to 6 for your chance to win each day. from ESPN 700 and the Utah Golf Association. Details can be found at ESPN700sports.com. CK, who's your favorite golfer in the history of the game?
Tiger Woods.
Text in Chris's favorite golfer right now at 877.
Can I zag?
Please do.
But not because he's my favorite golfer, just because it's a very random name that came to my mind. Nick Faldo.
Nick Faldo, the legend. Text in that name right now. We're not going to overthink it. 877-353-0700. We are sending you to Valley View. Holy smokes. One of the best courses in the state up north. 877-353-0700. ESPN Festival of Tees. Brought to you by the Utah Golf Association. All right, coming up next, Tusks Up. And Cameron Rising has announced his retirement from the sport of football. Chris covered Cam when he was at Utah, so we'll talk about that coming up right here on ESPN 700. Is this another one-hit wonder CK selection?
This is a one-hit wonder, but this is a Porter Larson selection.
What do we got here? Because I'm
There you
0
go.
for 2. I don't know who this is.
Really?
Yeah, I don't. I'm off my game
No
today.
teenage dirtbag from Spence, huh? I guess that's because you were like you weren't a dirtbag. You were a prep boy.
I was not. Although those two things are not mutually exclusive. We don't have to get into that on the program today. 2000 to 2010 one-hit wonders. Teenage Dirtbag, the name of the song or the name of the artist?
Wheatus is the artist.
Wheatus. Come on, man.
You knew about this?
Come on, man.
You do have obscure knowledge, which is impressive to me. But no, I'm 0 for 2 off my game today. Chris Camerati, one more segment with CK. All right, we've been waiting, really quite frankly, for months to hear from Cameron Rising about what his future plans would entail. And Cam sent out a statement today on social media that he has been forced to medically retire from football as a result of, well, not just one injury, quite frankly. I guess it was the hand injury that ultimately ended the whole thing. I just anticipated, and I would not have blamed him at all, that he was just going to make a couple $100,000 playing, maybe for a smaller school for one more year, because why not when you have the ability to, and when somebody is willing to pay you. Duke, get over here. If you'd like to see my dog trying to hump Chris, you can lob on to our ESPN 700 YouTube channel. Duke, come over here. Duke.
This is why I come into the studio.
This is my 4-year-old English cream puppy who I love, and now he's trying to climb up here on my lap. He just has this thing where he randomly will start humping people. I'm not sure why.
I'm glad it's just not me.
No, it's not just you.
Okay.
I mean, take it as
Yeah.
a compliment.
No,
He
I do.
obviously
I do.
likes the energy that you are exuding. So it's a good thing. Anyway, back to Cam Rising. He has announced that he has medically retired from the sport. You covered Cam while he was at the U. And, a couple years ago, I accidentally backed in into some information when the conversation to start the year was, well, Cam might be our week 1 starter. He might not be. We'll have to see. Week 1 comes. It's not Cam. Well, we'll have to see. Week 2. It might be week 2. It's not Cam week 2, week 3, etc. I think it was during the 4th week where somebody up there told me that he's not playing this year, and neither is Brant, but they have NIL deals in place, so we're going to be careful with the messaging, which I then went on air with, took a tremendous amount of pushback. A lot of people were very upset. Turned out to be the right information, and sorry, if I'm going to bring information on air, it's usually, sourced, and I don't just make things up. He took a lot of heat that year for cashing checks without playing, even though that's what happens in the pros, and it's time that we just kind of acknowledge that. Took a lot of heat second year when he went down after colliding with a Gatorade drink situation on the sideline. I'll say today what I said 2 years ago and I said last year. That young man should be remembered fondly here forever for what he did during his time playing quarterback for the U. So as somebody who covered him, your thoughts now that we know that Cam is done playing football?
Yeah, I mean, going back through the book on Cameron Rising would take like an entire radio segment because he went through so many twists and turns. I sketched it out recently, and the timeline is just insanely wild. Transfers from Texas to Utah in 2019, wins the starting job in 2020 during the COVID year, injures himself, season-ending shoulder injury in the first quarter of the USC opener.
Yep.
Is a backup to your guy, Charlie Brewer, the following year.
Shout out, Charlie.
Comes into that San Diego State triple overtime game, loses, and then leads Utah to its first Pac-12 title. Goes into the Rose Bowl. I'm just going to go, man, because it is
Please
insane.
do.
Toe-to-toe with Ohio State, 38-38 with like 4 minutes left, gets knocked unconscious, has to leave the game. Following year, I think they go 9-3. They needed a lot of luck the last couple weeks of the year to get to the Pac-12 title game. They annihilate USC, win a second straight Pac-12 title. They go to the Rose Bowl again. Cam's knee basically explodes against Penn State. He's out for 606 days, almost 2 years. 5 touchdowns in the opener against SUU, a career high, 1/2. And then in the next game against Baylor, he awkwardly tries to throw a ball out, runs into a Gatorade station, messes up his hand so much to the point now that like it's caused him to medically retire. That is wild. But it's not done. A few weeks later, he comes back with a glove on his hand, and he plays against Arizona State and is rolled up on and suffers a season-ending lower leg injury, but plays through the entirety of the game. They lose. And then for the rest of the year, Cam's on the sideline during games, and that was it. So that is skipping over a little bit of the portion that you mentioned of Cam's time gone, the fans' consternation regarding the messaging within Utah football of his availability. I've said this before. I think you've said this before. It was a failure on the program's part to just like not come out and say Cam's knee basically exploded. And Cam gave me permission to talk to Dr. Neil Elatrash, I think October 2023, to basically lay out medically what he was facing. Because a lot of people thought when he went down awkwardly against Penn State, like as an ACL tear, you know, if you have a clean ACL tear, if you're a young guy, like you can come back 6 to 9 months. I mean, Adrian Peterson coming back from the ACL once upon a time was like thought to have been revolutionary, and that's proved to be true for other people. But Cam didn't just tear his ACL; he tore his MCL, his meniscus, his MPFL, which is the ligament that stabilizes your kneecap to keep it in place. And I don't think Cam has a convoluted history or legacy at Utah. I'm with you. I think he goes down as one of the most revered and celebrated players and accomplished players in program history. It's just unfortunate that the rules, air quotes, in place kind of led a very odd portion of the fan base to voice its displeasure during this ongoing revolving door of the NIL era.
Real quick, we do have a little bit of breaking news. We know what Cam is going to do next. Let's get your thoughts on this. I'll just read the tweet. Cam Rising's next step, sources tell ESPN that he's going to be taking over as offensive coordinator at Newberry Park High School, his alma mater.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that?
Makes sense. He gets to go home, and that's celebrated player at a pretty prestigious place. Good for Cam. I'm happy for him. I think that makes total sense.
Let me follow up, because for our listeners that may not remember or are new to the program, the piece you wrote that you're referencing where you talked to Dr. Neil Atrash was the first time I fully understood what that kid went through. And I think it was the first time all of us who read that piece fully understood, because that was new information. You were able to get new information that we didn't know. Just how hard was that on him in your conversations with him? Yeah. Just what sort of toll did that take out of him?
Oh, it was a lot, man. I mean, like, I think talking to his parents, they didn't really sugarcoat that there were some dark days, because in this power structure, like, you can't necessarily come out and Cam kind of did on Bill's show that fall. Like, Cam kind of zagged a little bit, and you could tell he was kind of at his breaking point when he was like, yeah, I want you guys to know that I just didn't suffer like a clean ACL tear. Like, my knee basically exploded, which is the way Dr. Neil Elatrash explained it to me. And this is a guy who has operates on Aaron Rodgers and all of the star athletes basically in our sports ecosystem. So, yes, it was very difficult. Cam told me when I spoke to him before the season opener last year, he was like, there were days where I just stayed home because I didn't want to go out into public to have to tell people, sorry, I'm not playing. Sorry, I'm still hurt. I don't have anything to give you. I don't have any false hope to give you, because that's what it would have been. So if you're talking about, I mean, Cam at the time was probably 22, 23. Like, if you're talking about a kid who feels like he has compelled to DoorDash meals to his own house because he doesn't want to go to the downtown Smiths or the Brickyard Harmons because he wants to go get some grocery store sushi because he's afraid of running into somebody and letting them down publicly, I mean, that takes its toll. It would take its toll on anybody. So, yeah, it was a long and winding road back, and I just think, like, I can't. If I'm trying to plumb the depths of my brain, I can't think of another player who's like had as bad of injury luck. I mean, like, locally, obviously, but like in the pros, like Greg Oden is one, but Cam, just like every single time, the fact that he was able to stay healthy for those 2 years and get them to where he did is pretty remarkable.
65 total touchdowns between his arm and his legs, completed 63% of his passes, over 6,000 yards. You alluded to something earlier that I talked about a lot, and I know that certain people weren't thrilled with the way I framed it, but I felt like Cameron was failed by the adults in the room when it came to the messaging from the football program. I don't think they did him any favors. And look, you can talk all you want about this is a fortress and what happens behind closed doors is nobody's business and we don't care what the public thinks. We don't read, we don't listen, we don't watch. We are insulated as Utah family on 3. That's not the reality of the way the world works, especially for these kids in their 20s that were raised with cell phones as their babysitters and their companions and their best friends. NBA coaches have stories now where it's halftime of a playoff game and they walk in to address the team and all the players, most of whom are in their 20s and early 30s, are looking at their socials. So you can claim this messaging that you want to insulate your players and coaches from all the outside noise. I'm sure Cameron saw several of the things that were being said about him as a result of the ambiguity around his status, and that was not his fault, right? Is Duke trying to hump you again? Duke, no humping.
It would be impossible not to hear it or see it. And
So give me your thoughts on that, where I perceived a failure of messaging from the athletic department and the football program that did Cameron a tremendous disservice.
Well, this goes back to Kyle's injury policy, and he said ad nauseum that if there is an instituted conference-wide injury policy and report, he would be fine with it. But the fact that there's not, he doesn't feel like it compels him, and it wouldn't behoove the program to tip their hand either way. A competitive disadvantage. Sure. You're talking about college football coaches are looking for any, millimeter of competitive advantages that they can. And when it comes to injuries, I think so many of them are a little paranoid that it will allow the opposition to prepare for a Bryson Barnes as opposed to a Cam Rising. Anybody who saw Cam Rising get hurt on January 2nd in 2023 could have understood that there's a chance he wasn't going to be ready in 6 months to play against Florida. Like, logically, let's just be there. You're talking about people who have been around the game for probably decades, who have dealt with players who have had similar or more severe knee injuries, so they know. It could have been everything could have been alleviated if they would have come out week 1, not even week 1, fall camp. Cam's working. Week 1, Cam's still working. Week 2, Cam's still working. Week 3, we don't think he's going to be ready this year. Honestly, they didn't need Cam to beat Florida. Like, I don't know. This is the inner machinations of policy and power and messaging that a lot of people don't necessarily understand. But until there is, and this goes to all the other issues regarding college athletics and college football, until there's a tiered pyramid system and somebody at the top says everybody has to do this, people are just going to get to call their own shots. And
your points are well taken, and I understand where Kyle's coming from. There have been other coaches, including Lane Kiffin, and Lane is an interesting, forward-facing kind of snarky dude, but he outwardly mocks the coaches that hide behind the concrete wall of we are not discussing injuries because it really does not, in his opinion, have an effect on the outcomes of games. But if Kyle believes it does, I get it. And then the other thing, to be fair, to go back to what I was told, they were careful with their messaging to make sure Cam kept getting paid.
Yeah.
So that's another thing we should bring up.
As he should have.
100%.
But again, this is a chapter in college athletics that will go down as one of the most convoluted and confusing and fast-moving that we've ever seen. In real time in 2022 and 2023, people didn't know as much about NIL then as they do now. People didn't know that a house settlement was going to be coming down the pike and $20.5 million are going to be going to each athletic department to disperse at their behalf. So much is going on, but I do think, and I'm a little biased because I'm a member of the media, you're always going to serve yourself better if you're just as transparent as possible. Like, totally different circumstance, but like there are some people in the wake of the prank calls in the NFL draft, like some people might not even address it the way Jeff Ulbrich did.
Mm-hmm.
He stepped to the lectern, he gave a statement, and he took questions. The more you talk about it, the easier your messaging will get across, and you'll be viewed in a more positive light because you're not necessarily perceived to be hiding something.
Well said. And I think the other piece, in addition to the extremely unfair criticism Cameron took from the public here, not everybody, of course, and my opinion of most social media, as I've said, and I'll say a million times, mentally ill people throwing their feces at each other. And I don't program my show based off of at Ute Fan Vegas 47 and what he has to say today, or Go Cougs Levi Levin at the Brick Oven. I don't do it, but I see it because I'm a person in this ecosystem, and I saw some of the heat Cameron was taking. You heard a lot of, like, again, he's cashing checks without playing football, which happens in the pros too. They have contracts where they get hurt, they still get paid. And the other thing is, when Cameron first arrived, NIL was not a reality. He was not being paid to play.
He had to sit.
He had to
sit a year because transfer rules were
correct.
still in place.
He had to sit a year because of the transfer rules, and then he was not getting paid. So retroactively, I had no problem with him getting paid, because what are a couple of Pac-12 championships and 2 Rose Bowl appearances worth to that school? Fox did a really interesting piece after the second Rose Bowl about how many, I don't know exactly the science here, but how many students applied for entry at the University of Utah
Economic impact.
Because of the exposure. I think they estimated over 33 million people had exposure to Utah, the institution, as a result of what the football program did, winning 2 Pac-12 championships and going to 2 Rose Bowls. So what is that worth? Cameron certainly deserves a piece of it. Mm-hmm. So even though it was after the fact, go get your money, kid. No issue.
Well, and one thing I want to make sure is made clear is Cam was still practicing with the idea, and everybody was, in theory, in lockstep on this, that he could potentially be cleared to play that fall.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like everybody was sandbagging it. Cam was practicing. He had good days, and he had bad days. Dr. Elatrosh said that there were times where, his knee responded really well, and then there were times where there was a little achiness or a little minor swelling here and there. It just would have been so much easier to just be transparent about this stuff in retrospect. But really, if we're writing the last chapter, the last few paragraphs of Cam Rising's career at Utah, it shouldn't involve that. It should be, here's a dude who I'm very skeptical, and I try to avoid these war and warrior cliches when it comes to like football. But like, Cam really was the type of guy that literally put it out there on every single play. I mean, the USC hit went viral. He got right up in that Pac-12 championship game. And like, it was weird. Like, after he retired, the Athletic asked me to write like a story on it today. And I went back and watched all of the injuries that he suffered over the years. And it's like in the first Rose Bowl, when he gets knocked out, he's trying to make the right play. He's trying to throw the ball away when the Ohio State defenders are dragging him down so he doesn't take a sack. You can even say, like in the Baylor game where he hurts his hand, that's led to his eventual necessary medical retirement. He's trying to make the right play by throwing the ball away. Like, he is a universally revered player up there by coaches and players, and it's really hard to be that. And it's really hard to be that as a quarterback. Like, sometimes quarterbacks do not do the job, do not bring all the intangibles necessary, but talking to people over the years, like, that's who that guy was.
And I think it's fair to say that most everybody outside of, a select few on social media that use the internet to feel brave remember Cameron the way he should be remembered. There was this viral video during the draft process of Cam Ward, who was the #1 overall pick. He saw Cam Rising somewhere, and the video showed Cam Ward shouting, "Hey, there's the GOAT."
Yep.
At Cam Rising. Cam Ward, the #1 overall pick.
I think it was at a media day.
Is that what it was? Okay, I just saw it on social.
Yep.
So I feel like, and the First Take, Stephen A. Smith, legacy thing, whatever, I do feel like Cameron Rising's legacy at the University of Utah by everybody who matters and everybody who knows exactly what he meant to the program is intact. Fair?
Fair, and ironically enough, like when I was working on my last big Cam piece right before he got hurt in the Baylor game, I asked Dane Brugler, our draft expert.
Shout out Dane, my guy.
Where where Cam could be if he has a healthy and productive season. And Dane said, like, most of the scouts had told him that he had, a undrafted free agent grade, but if he had a great senior year, he could easily see teams falling in love with this guy and drafting him.
Yeah.
Which is the same case that you can say about Dylan Gabriel, who I've, spent time with. Like Dylan, the reason why Dylan came back to college football and went to Oregon was because he didn't have a draft grade that would have guaranteed him being drafted. Comes back a year, has a great year, gets drafted in the 3rd round. Shador Sanders, good year, gets drafted in the 5th round. Jackson Dart, good year, drafted in the 1st round. It is a bummer that this story ended this way, but as I've said ad nauseum on this show, man, football players get hurt.
Yes, they do. It is not a contact sport. It's a violent sport. And winning conference championships on the P5 level, then P4 level now, it's hard. Takes a long time. The first year Utah was in the Pac-12, Gordon, Monson, and myself doing the show had John Wilner on. And Gordon asked John, how many years until Utah wins a Pac-12 championship, goes to Rose Bowl? And I'll never forget what he said because it caught me off guard. Wilner said 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he was wrong, but you understand the sentiment. How many years until Utah wins a Big 12 championship in football?
Yeah.
How many? Big 12 championship.
16 teams now.
Mm-hmm.
Considering the flukiness of the league last year, it will be wholly dependent on the post-Kyle Whittingham era. So I'll say 15 to 20 years.
15 to 20.
If it doesn't happen during Kyle's era.
For sure. All right, last thing.
Tusks up.
You know.
We're up against the clock, and you're even going Tusks up, man.
We got a Tusks up before I set you loose. I mean, we've been debating what the name of this hockey club should be. I might forever just refer to them as the Utah Hockey Club, but now we're going to have a Zamboni dressed like the woolly mammoth. We're going to have a really fun mascot to entertain and provide whimsy to the families that will be going to the Delta Center to watch the Utah Mammoth. What are your thoughts now that we know what the name is?
So my question to you is, why is our market obsessed with singular names? Utah Jazz, Utah Mammoth, Real Salt Lake.
Well, I'll tell you this.
Well, I know, but it's not a coincidence. We don't. I mean, no offense to the bees, but like.
Sure. The Mammoth was not plural because it represents one Utah.
It's not, but there's 2 tusks.
I'm just. There are multiple tusks. I'm just telling you what the release said from the Utah Hockey Club, Smith Entertainment Group, whatever.
I know Porter did the science. So
he did.
Bless his heart.
Indeed.
He did it right.
Yep.
I'm going to be a proponent of having been in this area for a long time. I always believe this place to be a dinosaur place primarily in the fossil record. And I know that Porter negated that, but I didn't remember hearing about mammoth fossils growing up here.
Go ahead.
I mean, it's fair. The Utah Raptor, right? Like it's mostly what it's known for.
Mm-hmm.
Ogden Raptors.
Fairview Museum, Chris.
Fairview?
The
hometown of the mayor or of the governor of the state.
I think the most intact mammoth skeleton, one of the most intact mammoth skeletons, and the highest elevation a mammoth has ever been discovered.
Wait, is the mammoth fossil discovery in doubt? Do we need to put like a real Jimmy Walker media member, reporter on this?
Yeah, I can do it.
Please go discover whether or not the mammoth fossils are real, will you?
You got it.
Christopher, great to see you, my friend, and we'll see you soon, okay?
Yes, sir.
Chris Camerati from The Athletic. We are going to bring in Andy Larson coming up on the other side from the Salt Lake Tribune. We'll do some Jazz basketball, some playoff basketball. But on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon, let's welcome in my friend Alan Bybee from Pure Life Medical. Alan, happy Wednesday, sir. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm well. So let's start here. Pure Life Medical provides many services for people, but a big one is stem cell therapy. Tell us how it works.
Well, adult stem cell therapy is like recharging your body with the critical healing cells that we lose as we age. The therapy is effective at helping you repair your body and help potentially keep you out of surgery, and it's surprisingly affordable. In Pure Life, we have highly experienced providers that have treated thousands of patients, and you can review your individual situation to see if stem cells are right for you.
How do you know if you need or you could benefit from stem cell therapy, Alan?
Well, most everybody can benefit from stem cell therapy. Athletic injuries, you can speed up healing afterwards. It targets degenerative conditions such as osteoarthritis, joint pain, neuropathic pain, helping to restore function, regenerate damaged tissue, and significantly reduce pain. Chronic inflammatory diseases, autoimmune diseases like long COVID, Lyme disease, and especially if you're into biohacking. Biohacking helps with anti-aging. You can live as long and as healthy as possible. Brain trauma and degeneration, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, traumatic brain injuries, even brain fog can be helped with stem cells. And finally, aesthetically, you can look better using cells for facials and hair regeneration.
How can people go about getting a consultation with you guys over at Pure Life Medical?
All you have to do is schedule a free consult by calling Pure Life Medical in either Cottonwood Heights or in Layton, Utah, and just mention ESPN.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day, okay?
Thank you.
All right, Alan Bybee from Pure Life Medical. You can also go to purelifemedical.com. Pure is spelled P-U-R. So P-U-R, lifemedical.com for a free consultation. Check out their stem cell therapy. Great new client on the show. Shout out to our friends at Pure Life Medical. We will catch a quick break, and we're going to bring in Andy Larson coming up on the other side of a Wednesday drive right here on ESPN 700. NBA playoff basketball continues tonight. It has been an insanely entertaining start to this spring tournament that for the third straight year we don't experience here in Salt Lake City. We are about 23 minutes away from tip at TD Garden, where the Knicks will try to take a 2-0 lead on the Celtics. And then the late game, 7:30 on Turner, is the Nuggets and the Thunder. Our next guest covers the Jazz, NBA, other things for the Salt Lake Tribune. He is Andy Larson on a Wednesday afternoon. Happy belated Cinco de Mayo, my friend. How we doing?
Happy May the 7th to you as well. I'm doing good. How about you?
I gotta tell the story for our listeners. So just to give you context, I have a lot of excuses from people who I enjoy playing golf with as to why they cannot join me. So I'm used to it. But Andy Larson used the most unique and, quite frankly, silly excuse that I've ever heard in my entire life. When I texted Andy like, "Hey, can you golf on Thursday?" and his response was, "It is Cinco de Mayo," which caught me off guard, Andy, I got to say.
So the full story was you were trying to set up like a Saturday morning golf, and I think it was Friday night a couple years back that Cinco de Mayo laid on. And so I thought, like, hey, man, I'm going to be out on the town on this particular day. I don't know that I want to get up early for the golf and, given what celebrations might occur on a Cinco de Mayo.
Only caveat is I know it wasn't Saturday. I think it was Thursday because I was surprised that you were going to get that loose on a Wednesday, even though it was Cinco de Mayo.
That might be true, too. Yeah, that's honestly extremely possible.
All good, my friend. All right, we got some unexpected news this week about our local basketball team. Will Hardy's contract was not set to expire because he had 2 years left after having both options picked up for year 4 and year 5. But now the contract goes through 2031. Andy, give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of clarifies a lot of the things that we've talked about for the last year, right? Like, I think Will Hardy's really well respected around the league, and kind of the question does he want to stay in Utah, or does he want to go somewhere where he could win more? And then, if from a Jazz point of view, are they going to stick with Will Hardy for as long as this rebuild takes to coalesce into hopefully a contending team? And I think the answer is now definitely yes on both cases. I mean, to have fully six more years of Will Hardy under contract, that's a long coaching deal. That's as long as it gets for kind of the non-established coach. It is nearly unprecedented to have a coach as young as Will have a contract like that. So it definitely reflects the belief that the front office has in him, that he is the right coach to coach the Jazz, not only through a rebuild, but through a contending era as well. And then, it reflects the desire of Will Hardy to kind of settle down in Utah, to set roots here and make this his home and his competitive situation for, the foreseeable future.
So a couple of interesting things. Greg Popovich, of course, has stepped down as the coach of the San Antonio Spurs. And after Coach Pop had initially left the Spurs, there were more than a few people that wondered aloud if San Antonio would try to contact Utah about making Will the next head coach in San Antonio. Ironically enough, Andy, a few years back, Tim McMahon on this show surmised that Quinn Snyder might leave the Jazz at the end of his deal to take over after Coach Pop was done as well. So that was kind of out there. And you asked Will a question postseason media. I'll paraphrase. If a team that is ready to win comes calling, are you interested? And he said, I'm all in. I wonder what you think the motivation was for both these sides to get this done right now, because to your point, stuff like this doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, I think it was the speculation a little bit. And look, I'll be honest, I asked the question from a speculative point of view because I didn't know what would happen. And I just do know that winning 17 games in an 82-game season is really tough on coaches. And I know how highly regarded Will Hardy is around the league, that there might have been some good teams kind of knocking on that door, whether that's, you could go to Phoenix and coach Kevin Durant and Devin Booker maybe, or, I think they're going to be in Denver and Nikola Jokic. Like there are a number of situations around the league that maybe make sense for a coach that had his eyes elsewhere. And so I wanted to know if Will had his eyes elsewhere. And, I think it's relatively clear that he did not. I think obviously the San Antonio situation also would have made sense for him because of, that organization, with Victor Wembanyama, with Popovich and his relationship there. And then, the fact that his family is there too, right? Like, I think that's important. So, look, it's, I think it does say a lot that Will decided kind of against those things and the stability and security and the situation that he has here. And overall, a belief in the Jazz's long-term plan, even though, the wins are not there right now.
Do you know how this process started? Do you know if the Jazz contacted Will and said, let's talk? Do you know if Will's agent or representatives contacted the Jazz and said, let's figure something out? Do you know how this all went down?
I don't. I asked Will that question on the day he signed the contract, and he kind of slid past that question a little bit and just said, it's something largely the negotiations, as I put him, went through his agent rather than through him. So, but I don't know, how long ago these contract, talks started. And I don't know kind of who initiated it. No, I asked and didn't get an answer.
All right. So I want to be very clear. In a profession with very little security, in a profession where essentially more often than not you are hired to be fired, in a profession where Michael Malone and Taylor Jenkins lost their job, this is something that if you're Will Hardy, you sign and you say thank you and you take the 9-year runway if he coaches through the rest of his contract. However, there is there's a risk involved here. Andy, there's a risk that Will Hardy has trusted a process that so far has not manifested itself into a position where he has good players to take into a gym. Now, it's very early on, but what do you make of that kind of portion of this where, to your point and why you asked him the question, there are plenty of organizations that would be interested in Will and organizations that probably have better players where he has a chance to win right away. He is taking a risk, trusting a process that so far has been mixed to be kind. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, look, I think what he says, and I think he believes, and frankly, I think you can make a good case for, is that the way to win in the NBA is right now through developing players in the draft. And, you look around the teams that have tried to go after the, expensive free agent route, and they have not done very well in recent seasons. The teams that have done well are the Thunder, who built it all through the draft and, one key trade. And teams like the Denver Nuggets, who, won a championship around Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. and guys that they drafted. I think there is this thought, that you can get essentially that this is the way to build an actually championship contending team. Again, Boston with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, he's obviously very familiar with that situation. So I think he thinks that that kind of the path that the Jazz are on is the right path. Now, you and I and he both, we all know that the Jazz have a 14% chance at Cooper Flagg coming up in the lottery next week, right? So the odds are not high, but this is the way that you can build an actual contender rather than just kind of an ephemeral one that doesn't last for very long because you are kind of relying on older guys. Clearly the Jazz won't be there. Now, a lot has to go right. So much has to go right. The odds have to be in your favor, but I think the NBA as currently constructed with the second apron and everything else is a draft and develop league, and that's the path that the Jazz are on.
All right, it's tough to ask you about what the Jazz offseason is going to look like because we're all waiting for Monday to see where they will draft. So we did have the Utah Hockey Club land on some lady luck in year one in a way that it's never landed on the Jazz in 50 years. So take us through the exercise, contingent upon what Monday brings us. What, generally speaking, is your understanding about how the Jazz are going to approach this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, stay the course, right? Kind of either way, I don't expect them to all of a sudden ramp up next to either Cooper Flagg or Trey Johnson, whoever they get at number 1 or number 5. This is going to be a long development process, right? They also hope to get someone good at the end of the first round. They hope to get, they hope to make some changes with the veterans. I think finding new homes for John Collins, Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, that all makes sense. It's just kind of whether or not other teams are interested in trading for those guys. And, I also don't think that the Jazz are interested in like giving up picks or anything like that to dump those salaries because, why would you, given that you're not trying to do anything in the next year anyway? Look, I think there's a path maybe that, hey, you get Cooper Flagg and then you're feeling good with that front court. And then there's a guard that unexpectedly, becomes available and you can go out and get that guy. But let's be honest, the Jazz aren't trading for Giannis. They would get beat by several other teams in that negotiation. And then ultimately Giannis would not choose to resign in Utah because they're probably not going to win that many games. It's just like, it's going to be another year of kind of build from within. And ultimately, like the lottery pick will determine how kind of exciting the youth is. But I don't expect the Jazz to kind of go for it this year because, there's another excellent draft next year. They hope to get a top 3 pick in, and they hope to retain the Oklahoma City pick by being one of the worst 8 teams in the league. So they don't have to give it to their, future Western Conference title contender enemy, if you will, your rival. So, look, I don't see the tides all of a sudden turning and the Jazz going for winning next year.
Okay, any outside shot, I understand the way you answer the question, I understand the context, but should some sort of, because there will be plenty of teams that are looking to jettison talent, and maybe some players, to your point, a Giannis who looks to get out. We know how this organization has thought in the past, being audacious enough to say we are going to sign Paul George and trade for Mikal Bridges and things like big game hunting. For Jazz fans that are chomping at the bit, watching playoff basketball for the 3rd straight year, not having that here, any shot at all that potentially a big name is brought in?
A little bit of a shot, but don't buy season tickets because of it. Don't get your hopes up because of it, right? Like, in the end, the players that we're talking about on the market, for the most part, are older and don't make sense for them to re-sign with the Jazz long term, or I think ultimately wouldn't want to be in Utah because where the Jazz are competitively. Think about it like the way you think about the Washington Wizards is the way other teams think about the Utah Jazz right now, and other players think about the Utah Jazz right now. So, like, if you are Giannis and the Washington Wizards get Cooper Flagg, do you still want to go to Washington to go play with Cooper Flagg? Or are you kind of thinking to yourself, oh, no, that's really kind of not enough for me to win an NBA championship again like I want to? No, he's going to be thinking about playing with the other better teams in the league. He's going to be thinking about the Houston Rockets or the Oklahoma City Thunder, or what do the Cavs look like if they had Giannis? Like stuff like that, right? Like it's just unrealistic in the way today's NBA works, where you have to essentially get a player on board and you have to get an agent on board and you have to get the other team on board for you to use all of those draft assets of Jazz have accumulated to all of a sudden go from zero to contention, right? Like, we just don't see that. We see up-and-coming teams trade for players like Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, like the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Minnesota Timberwolves did. We don't see teams go from nothing to having to trading for legit top-tier talent and becoming true contenders overnight. It's just not how the NBA is working right now as it's currently set up.
So you and I have spoken about this in the past, but because it's topical based on what we're seeing in the NBA playoffs, I am going to bring it back around in case our listeners have not heard the conversation from your prism before, because you're as uniquely qualified to discuss this as anybody out there, quite frankly. And since we are seeing Rudy Gobert with a historic 2020 game against the Lakers to eliminate them, Donovan nearly dropped half 100 last night, albeit in a losing effort. Since we're seeing a litany of former Jazz players play well in the postseason, is there ever any part of you that looks at what's happening and questions the decision of this new front office to break that team down brick by brick, or was it just simply their only option?
I think it's fair to reevaluate that as the picks have decreased in value. And as, their own rebuild has taken 3 years instead of 1, right? Like, the Jazz thought that they were going to be in the running for Victor Wembanyama, and instead were kind of played it in the middle for 2 years that ended up being relatively wasted. That being said, Donovan Mitchell was just extremely unhappy in Utah, and I do not think that he would have re-signed. I understand that publicly he has said that he wanted to stay in Utah. I do not believe it for a second. I do not, frankly, I have talked to too many people behind the scenes. I have heard too many people who are close with Donovan talk about this. I do not believe that he would have stayed in Utah. And then it's like, okay, well then, do you really want to keep the Rudy Gobert contract moving forward? Probably not. Maybe there's a world in which, like, hey, maybe you run it back one more year with a new head coach and see what happens. But ultimately, like, that's kind of the same process that the Phoenix Suns tried with Mike Budenholzer just now, replacing Frank Vogel with Bud, and now their situation looks even worse, and now, their assets aren't tradable anymore, right? So, look, I still think it's probably the right move. I think more of my criticism goes to what happened in the last 2 years, where they played out in the middle, getting the 9th and 10th pick, and ultimately not pushing the franchise in either direction in those years. Looks like a mistake right now.
You think OKC is in trouble? Last time you and I spoke, I felt like we were on the same page. And, Andy, I'm always hesitant to simply anoint a team that has not had a deep playoff run together. And I'm fine when I'm proven wrong, because ultimately sometimes teams do rise up, but more often than not, it's rite of passage. They swept the Pelicans last year. They lost to the Mavs in 6. It's just a different game, man, come playoff time, juxtaposed to regular season basketball. And I was just wildly impressed watching the Denver Nuggets. I know it's cliche, and I know it's not something we can use analytics for, but it was championship metal. It was effort to the end. It was not giving up. It was staying in the thing. And then a great final play. Westbrook finds Aaron Gordon, knocks down that game winner. Man, if they don't get it done tonight, it's going to be interesting to hear the conversation. Do you think OKC's got something to worry about?
I mean, a little bit to worry about, certainly. And I think, they need to play better. I think they need to make some rotation changes, playing Hartenstein more probably. I think the Chet Holmgren bit is probably less important against this Denver team. And then Dagnall needs to coach better, frankly. Like, they can't foul up 3 as early in the game as they did against the Nuggets in Game 1. And this is a guy who is last season's NBA Coach of the Year, and I is really highly regarded, and I think is a very good coach. But I think there are some, this is where you need to make mano-a-mano kind of matchup changes in kind of a tie-lose sort of way. And it's a different kind of playoff coaching is very different than regular season coaching. And we need to see kind of the best efforts from Dagnall. I think ultimately I'm still picking the Thunder in this series. I'm still picking the Thunder to make it even to the Western Conference Finals. But yeah, it was a questionable performance, and the Nuggets stole one that they probably shouldn't have. I think there are questions about whether Shea's and Jalen's offense works as well in playoff basketball as it does in regular season basketball. That all being said, they still, I think, are the best defense in the league, I think by a significant amount. I do still think the Nuggets have significant depth issues that if Michael Porter Jr.'s tailbone gets it all worse, or if one of their players goes down or something happens like that, then they're in really deep trouble. You still need good games from Jokic and Jamal Murray, I think, to win games in this series. And, I still think that essentially Oklahoma City, besides Jokic, is out-talents the Nuggets. Anyway, we'll see what happens in it. I do think all 4 teams with home court advantage need to be worried right now, given that they're down in the series. The Thunder might be the one team, because of what they did in the regular season and because of their talent, because of their defensive strength, that I'm least worried about among those teams so far.
Who did you vote for? And maybe you sent this out, because I know you're a voter. Because where I'm at is Jokic is still the best player in the world, but I do think Shea's the MVP. What's your take?
I voted Jokic MVP. I honestly slept on it, though, dude. I just think Shea's season was awesome. He was obviously the best player on the best team. Even ignoring that context, he was clearly at least the second best player in the league. It's so close. Jokic having his best ever season, Jokic shooting 45% from three, and then Jokic making his teammates better, I think, at a higher level than Shea does, probably made the difference for me. But, resuscitated Russell Westbrook's career. Christian Brown had an incredible year this year, despite not having much of a bag. Aaron Gordon revitalizing his career offensively just through, cuts and the space that Jokic provides. It's all awesome. So I voted Jokic. It's an impossible choice. Shea as MVP makes sense to me too. It is what it is. But yeah, I couldn't not vote for Jokic based on just the individual season he had.
All right, away from hoop for a moment, just to get some thoughts on some things happening around town. We'll end with a little RSL, but we do know the permanent name of the hockey team that plays in our market. The Utah Hockey Club is no more, and they shall henceforth and forever be known as the Utah Mammoth. Andy, what's the take?
Yeah, it's the best name I thought of the three. It's the logo is really good, I think. Ben Barnes over there does a tremendous job when they ask him to make the logos. He is asked to create logos of other teams nationally, and he's on the Utah Jazz and I guess the SEG payroll, right? It is, it's kind of awesome that one of the best logo designers in the world works here and is from here in Utah. I think kind of the secondary logos looked well. I thought the jerseys were maybe I was expecting maybe a little more of a change up rather than just putting the Mammoth logo right over where it said Utah before on the jerseys. But hey, it's I think it's a good look. I think it's totally professional. It looks like the national response was pretty positive as well. I didn't think the fan vote process was handled amazingly well, but and obviously they leaked the name early, so today's announcement wasn't a surprise or anything. But it was a relatively good 7 or 8 out of 10 outcome.
All right, final thing. RSL goes to Vancouver, gets the L. Vancouver randomly is awesome, which I didn't know about, but they smoke Miami in the Leagues Cup or whatever the hell that was, and they're atop the table in the West. I don't know, man. It's tough. Johnny Russell is now hurt. He's not playing this weekend. We saw Agata for a moment. Just where's your confidence level in RSL before I set you loose?
Yeah, I mean, not high. Look, Vancouver's a really good team, and I didn't think RSL played poorly against them. Vancouver's lineup was pretty heavily rotated. They weren't playing some of their best dudes, at least from the starting whistle, because of their matchup against Miami in the Champions League, and that they won that is awesome. And they do play some really, really good soccer. I think we saw some of that in that matchup. It is my goal that one day RSL can beat Miami too, right? That we do not just consider RSL's goals to be to make the playoffs, but indeed to contend for Champions Leagues and to contend for the top of the Western Conference and to contend for MLS Cups. And, when you're signing 35-year-old Johnny Russell as your free agent and trading $500,000 for Willie Agata as your starting striker, those are low ambition moves. So until, while Diego Luna and Omeka Nelly and I think a number of Rafael Cabral, a number of RSL players are very good, some of the best among their positions in MLS, the team will continue to be kind of mid. Right now they are 11th in the Western Conference, and well out of the playoffs. They will continue to be pretty mid until they have good players all around the pitch and until ownership and management steps up to buy the best players possible. Now, they no longer can do that because the transfer window is closed, and so we have to wait until the summer transfer window, which ends with 8 games left to go in the season. So, as far as I'm feeling about this season, I'm pretty pessimistic. I think they're a mid team. My hope is that the Millers will invest in it to the degree necessary for them to become contenders, not just also-ran playoff teams. I will be watching that carefully and closely.
All right, fair enough. Andy, thanks for the time, buddy. Have a good week, and we'll chat soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ben.
Andy Larson covers the Jazz and the NBA for the Trib and writes a data column for them as well. Get him on social media at Andy B. Larson is where you find him. All right, coming up in the 5 o'clock hour, Cameron Rising has announced his intention for next year. We'll tell you what that looks like, and we'll talk about that. But we'll welcome in Ryan from the Dish Pros now before we catch a quick break. Give him a call at 801-424-DISH, and he'll walk you through how much money he can save you with a number of different dynamics. What's going on, Ryan?
Simple and easy, guys. Call us today and take advantage of the deals. Guys, Dish has got this fantastic promotion. 2 years worth of credits. Price is guaranteed. Guys, the DVR is king. That's what Dish has. The biggest, fastest DVR out there. 16 tuners, 2 terabytes of storage. You have all the streaming apps built in, video on demand. You get everything in one place. Plus, you have access to all the content on the Dish Anywhere app, so it doesn't matter where you are. You can get your shows, your games, be able to watch it. Call us up and upgrade. The price is guaranteed. We'll throw in credits for the next 2 years. The price won't change. Plus, we'll have you installed for free and throw in dinner at JCW's. Call us today also about internet solutions. I have a half a dozen of fantastic different internet providers. Prices from as low as $35 a month on up to $50, $60 a month. Call us up and see what we can hook you up with because, listen, I hear it every day. Today, I had a friend come to me. He's like, I'm spending like $400 a month on cable. Don't do it anymore. Call us and let us save you money. 424-DISH is the number. It's 801-424-DISH.
All right, we got 3 hours down. We've got 1 hour to go. The 5 o'clock hour of this little radio program comes your way next on a Wednesday afternoon right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. All right, let's get it Drive at 5 time, Wednesday afternoon style. Beautiful, beautiful day outside. How do you like 72 degrees and sunny here in downtown Salt Lake City today? And as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Halfway through that work week, and you are one day closer to the weekends. Good to have you guys with us. Spence Checketts behind the mic, Porter Larson behind the glass. We've had a jam-packed, busy Wednesday show. Got some NBA playoff action tonight. A slow start at the TD Garden sees the Boston Celtics hold a 4-3 lead over the New York Knicks. The Knicks took game 1 at TD Garden, looking to take a 2-0 lead. Neither team shooting straight so far. Late night game will be the Denver Nuggets trying to take a 2-0 lead against the Oklahoma City Thunder. TNT has the coverage for you guys tonight. So NBA playoffs continue tonight. After an insanely entertaining night last night, and every single night in this tournament come spring is awesome. And it reminds you of what basketball looks like when the greatest athletes in the world and the greatest basketball players in the world decide they care about playing. The Indiana Pacers shocked Donovan Mitchell and the Cleveland Cavaliers last night. Tyrese Halliburton step back 3 for the win, and the Pacers go back to Indianapolis up 2-0. On the number 1 seed out of the Eastern Conference, the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, in NBA history, teams that have lost the first 2 games at home have gone on to win a 7-game series only 5 times. So, Cleveland in trouble. This could be another situation where Donovan Mitchell, with an insanely productive year, could be going home after the second round. Donovan's never been past the second round, as we all know around here. And then without Stephen Curry, and by the way, Steph will be out at least 1 week. And you could tell if you were watching the game last night on that little floater when he came up lame. He was grabbing his hamstring, and simply hamstrings are really, really complicated. Oftentimes you can get by pretty quickly, but if not, it can linger for a while. And the reports are Steph will miss at least 1 week, which means he's definitely out for game 2, definitely out for game 3, and it puts his status for game 4 in serious question. But the Warriors last night were able to get it done even without Stephen Wardell Curry, beating the Timberwolves in Minneapolis 99-88. And they take a 1-0 lead as well. So NBA playoff action. Big news around here today is that our local hockey team has a new name and a permanent name, and it is the Utah Mammoth. Not the Utah Mammoths, not plural, the Utah Mammoth is the name. After, allegedly they put it open for a vote. I have my questions, but we have the answer that we've been waiting for a number of different months as far as what the name will be for the Utah Hockey Club. It is no longer the Utah Hockey Club. It is the Utah Mammoth, and they will draft number 4 coming up in the NHL draft. After moving up 10 spots, they had a 1.5% chance of doing so, and they were able to get that done. So June the 27th and the 28th, now it's the time for the Utah Jazz to have that same lady luck shine upon them during their lottery experience, and we'll find that out coming up on Monday of next week. Quick reminder, we are your home of the NBA Draft Lottery here in the market. So on this show, we will say goodnight just a little bit early and then bring you the NBA Draft Lottery live coming up at 5 o'clock on Monday of next week. 5 o'clock hour of the program is brought to you by our friends at Advanced Window Products. You can get $2,500 off when you buy 10 windows or more. Local Salt Lake company operated by our guy, Nate Orchard, the mayor of Sac Lake City, Jake Weber. Great family-owned business. They've been around for basically 40 years, committed to our community, and they're the best at what they do. So here's the nice thing. The weather's about to get really warm, so you might want to upgrade windows now. If you don't have windows upgraded and the weather gets warm this summer, you will have to jack up that air conditioning, and it will cost you a ton of money, okay? So if you feel like you're in the market or about to be in the market, today's the day to call. But the nice thing is, if you feel like you've got a few months left as far as the lifespan of your windows, and you're looking ahead to, say, the fall prior to the weather getting cold, if you just call and get on their schedule, you're going to lock in a savings of $2,500 when you buy 10 windows or more. So here's the deal. Give them a call today, Advanced Window Products, at 801-850-9100, or visit advancedwindows.com. It's 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, or online at advancedwindows.com. Another piece of big news broke today. Unexpectedly busy show and a busy day. Cameron Rising has announced that he is medically retiring from football. Cameron released a short statement on his social pages today, and here's what he had to say. He said, quote, Due to a hand injury I suffered during the Baylor game, I've been advised by 2 orthopedic physicians that I will never be able to return to playing football. I'll be obtaining a third medical opinion and will undergo the recommended surgery. I will continue to rehab and do all I can to get healthy. In the meantime, I will unfortunately be forced to medically retire from the game I love. My why has always been my family. I've always thought of my teammates as my brothers and always will. Thank you guys for always pushing me to improve and just making this game enjoyable. Thank you to the coaches for guiding me in the right direction to become a better man and a better player. Coach Ludwig, thank you for turning me into a football nerd and showing me the correct way to respect the game. Lastly, thank you to all the fans and everyone that supported me throughout my career. You all made the moment special. Cam, it has been announced that Cam is taking a position as the offensive coordinator at his old school. So some exciting stuff there. Sources tell ESPN that Cam Rising will be taking over as the offensive coordinator at Newberry Park High School in California, his alma mater. Rising, a 3-year starter at Newberry Park from 2015 to 2017. He'll coach 4-star 2026 Michigan quarterback pledge Brady, I believe it's Smigel, next fall. So congrats to Cam. Let's do more on this. Chris Camerani covered Cameron Rising at the University of Utah, so we'll talk more about Cam's return. All right, I know this one. Absolutely, Story of a Girl, right?
There you go. There you go.
I was disappointed in my lack of musical knowledge earlier. I pride myself on that, where we're doing one-hit wonders from the early 2000s, where you and Christopher Camerani both picked a song that I was unfamiliar with.
Maybe you're more of a one-hit wonders from the 80s, 90s guy.
You know what?
70s?
You don't need to make a joke about that. I will tell you this. I was speaking with somebody recently, was asked what year I was born.
Uh-huh.
And when I said 1978, I was met with shock. I don't think this person had ever met anybody born in the 70s before outside of their parents.
I had a similar experience, but not obviously 1978. But
Don't say obviously 1978. That's unnecessary ammo.
I had a full-grown person talk to me and refer to me as an old century person. Old century.
Why? Oh, because you were born
1900s. Like people from post 2000 are referring to us as that, apparently.
Huh.
Which made me feel really weird.
Are you a millennial or are you an older Gen Z?
I guess I'm a millennial.
What year were you born?
94.
1994 generation. Luckily, we have Google. My computer's moving. So you're Gen Y.
Whatever that is.
You're a millennial. It's the same thing. Millennials are also Gen Ys. I don't know, man. So you're a millennial, but you're like at the tail end. You're like the youngest possible millennial.
I'm like the youngest possible millennial, but also like the oldest millennial you'll find in some ways.
All right. So here's, let's see. Should we do some characteristics? Millennial characteristics to see if they, do you feel like you fit your generation? Do you feel like you belong in that generation?
Not really. Sometimes. That's a hard one. There's too many of us to fit in that box, but not really. Not usually.
All right. Millennials are known for being tech savvy, socially aware, value driven.
Okay.
So you're mildly accepting all of those, or like where are you at?
For being a media professional, I am not tech savvy. Like the fact that we're on air and streaming every day is like a monumental feat of human accomplishment. If you were to see me like try to set stuff up, technically speaking, it's like your grandfather. I have to call and ask people for help, and
I'm now to the age where my son is visibly embarrassed watching me even send a text.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why does that take you so long? So my son's a Gen Z, so he is not a millennial. All right, so let's just do this real quick. You say yes or no. Top characteristics of millennials. Number one, influential in the workplace.
No. Sorry. I feel like we're in sports media, so we're out there.
Right.
But I try to hide in the workplace mostly.
Number two, you know what? Confident with technology? Also no. Number three, millennials are cautious about their personal data.
There we go.
Are you?
I think so.
Number four, millennials are avid savers.
Okay. This is an interesting one to me because we're growing up in very much a different economy than like our other descendants. Maybe recently. As an adult, yes.
Okay.
As a kid, no.
Number five, millennials love to travel.
I do. I don't do it enough, but I do.
Number six, millennials are nostalgic.
Very much so, actually.
Number seven, millennials are competitive.
Yes.
You are. Number eight, they love podcasts.
Okay.
Our podcast. Millennials love our podcast.
Just one for me.
Number nine, I'll just read it. They're interested in fashion and luxury.
Ooh, luxury.
Are you interested in luxury?
I got to have my heated seats.
Okay.
Not really, but that's where I'll go.
Number 10, millennials are foodies. There's not a worse term. Oh, you like food? Congratulations. That is the most pretentious thing that anybody says about themselves. Like, oh, I'm a foodie. Oh, you like food?
Usually,
you're kidding me.
Usually, what foodie means is you like expensive food that has like a presentation and something around it.
It's exhausting.
I'm with you on that one. I'm not a foodie. I'm a garbage disposal. You could like burn a pizza and I'll eat it. So I'm not a foodie.
I've always hated, like, who doesn't love food? Oh, I'm such a foodie. I've never been to that. Shut up. So obnoxious. Number 11, millennials use social media for networking.
Yeah.
You do that.
Had to.
Number 12, this fits you as well. I've seen you change your habits in tremendous ways. Millennials are aiming to be more healthy.
I was going to say, yeah, my habits have changed in many. I go through phases for sure. And the main one somewhat recently has been that one, trying to be healthy.
Okay, so I happen to be, and I'm very lucky, that I happen to be a member of the greatest generation. That's what it's known. Gen X. Gen X, ultimately, this is the bottom line. We didn't start any of the problems. We're not interested in solving them. Leave us alone. We're watching Saved by the Bell.
Yeah. It's pretty accurate.
We stay above the fray because we didn't cause any of these problems. All right, so let's run down the list here real quick, and then we'll catch a break and say goodnight. 8 key characteristics of Gen X. Number 1, Gen Xers have more money than you might think. No comment on that. Number 2, they're motivated by value. Number 3, they have a unique path to product discovery. Number 4, Gen X has high brand loyalty. Number 5, Gen X is into holistic health. Number 6, they have a relatively high interest in new tech. Number 7, Gen Xers like smart home products. Number 8, they have varied social media habits. This list is dumb. I have no comment on any of that. You know what? Before we get out of here, let's have you chime in on the retirement of Cameron Rising, a person that you have been able to come to know really well and a player that you covered during his time at Utah. We've been waiting to hear his plans. Now we know. Before we say goodnight, what's the Porter take?
Yeah, man, obviously happy for Cam that he now knows what he's going to do. That was not the case for a lot of this last couple of years, and I think that's part of the frustration of Utah fans. I understand. I get part of the frustration of media members who covered it. I get it as well. But, you know, a large part of what was behind the scenes was Cam didn't know. Cam was, you know, campaigning to play and wanting to get back out there while getting conflicting reports from doctors. He continues to want to get back out there. He said it himself in his post. I'm retiring, but I kind of still want to train and play football maybe, right? That's been what's going on with Cam for 3 years now. So to have a little bit of finality, a little bit of something to look forward to, I am really happy for him in that regard. But looking back on it, man, it didn't end. I don't want to say well. It just didn't end the way we would have wanted to for a player of that caliber. But Cam should be regarded as one of the best players in Utah football history. A lot of the players that we look to as like legendary Utes, Steve Smith, Alex Smith, they went on to have really good NFL careers and kind of built on good Utah careers. But while in Salt Lake City, Cam has a argument to be made as maybe the most influential Ute of all time, right? Getting over the Power 5 hump is something that, yeah, a lot of the Utes before him didn't have an opportunity to do, but just never did and never would have. And to get 2 of them and to get to 2 Rose Bowls, that is something that 100 years from now, Utah football will still have that in their media archive. And he should be well regarded in all Utah circles. I know the ones that matter. He really is. It's only kind of the fray that lost some perspective on the Cam Rising situation later on. But yeah, ultimately just really happy that he is able to find a landing spot, a place he's familiar with in a situation where I think he's going to be really good. Cam was basically an offensive coordinator assistant for a good portion of his Utah career because of injuries, and he leaned into it with Andy Ludwig. So it should be fun to see what his next step is. It's been good for Eric Weddle. Cam's doing it a little earlier maybe than expected, but I'm looking forward to following.
Celtics Knicks right now, and then OKC Nugs later on. So fun night once again of NBA playoff action. Porter, before we say goodnight, what comes our way on a Thursday edition of the show?
On a Thursday edition of The Drive, we'll chat with Alex Jensen. Yes, University of Utah's newest head basketball coach on the program tomorrow. Of course, the Dallas Mavericks season is over, so he is full-time at the helm of the Runnin' Utes. Dave McMiniman stops by for the NBA Daily Assist. He'll put a wrap on the Lakers season, talk some Western Conference basketball. We'll have some sports court action. Our friend Handy and Handy at Handy Law Utah. And then hoping for Nick Raimondo, Hall of Fame Nick Raimondo. But if not, we'll catch up with another RSL guest on a Thursday.
All right, so join us for a Thursday program. We'll say goodnight for a Wednesday show, and a special thank you to Tony Jones, Neil Smith, Chris Camerani, and Andy Larson. For any of the sound you may have missed from the show today, go to the website, which is ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. It's how I listen to our station. The ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store or the Google Play Store for free. And then finally, for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 hours, check out our podcast page. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts, and that's available wherever you get your shows. So wherever you like to get pods, search for us, hit that subscribe button, give us a rating and a review, say nice things in the comments, and give us all the stars. You will be eternally blessed. For Porter, I'm Spence saying good night. Enjoy your Wednesday evening. We will talk to you on a Thursday drive. And as always, you know where to find it. It's right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be